Hey, Cole, and thanks for helping with your event planning. So much of this stuff happens in the background, right? You know, the teams get together, they work out these meetings, chatting back and forth, losing hours of sleep. So, and it's stuff that you don't see in the background. So big shout out to Tyler and Raz and Cole and everybody else on the event planning. It was really wonderful. So, could take a little while to load up just because we have a lot going on. So welcome to the Catalyst Sustainability Goals #3, Regenerative Agriculture and Cardano, hosted by Cardano4Climate and becoming a very big collaborative project across Catalyst. So 6 months ago, what began as a challenge has grown into a community. And it seems like, you know, you find the right environment, the right place, the right time. Just don't advance the slides for a second. If you can go back would be awesome. So there's a magic that happens when we find the right soil, the right environment, the right place, the right time, the connections and people. And it feels like that's happened about 6 months ago. And we've done so much. And we've grown into this community. Next slide, please. And maybe it'll take some while to advance the next slide. There we go. So we started as the challenge is climate change. We're fighting it. We're trying to do something. Scott Poynton says that climate change is a failure in cooperation. We're not going to fail at this. And this is why we've come to this next phase as Cardano4Climate. And we are working on, I think it's the next slide, you can try it. Climate change, the cooperation. And we're working across all sorts of different platforms, reaching out to everybody. It's not about Cardano4Climate or a group of people, but it's about all of us. Because if anything else, we've realized in the last little while that we are who we have been waiting for. There's nobody else coming to rescue us. It's us and our responsibility, and every single person here in the meeting and watching this show. So you can go to the next slide, please. And as Yoram reminds me, this is only the beginning, and each day is a gift, and let's make the most of it. So welcome to Regenerative Agriculture and Cardano. Over to you, Tyler.
Well, thank you, Melanie. Next slide. As long as we've all noted all of our amazing speakers that we have lined up today. So I'll keep this pretty brief. We have an action-packed day. But just really quickly to introduce myself. My name is Tyler. I am a mushroom farmer in Philadelphia, indoors. Not exactly what we think of when we think of regenerative, but we're working our way towards that. You can see some of our mushrooms that we grow there. And because I work with my hands, it affords me a lot of time to listen to people speak and to think. And that sort of has led me to where I am here, which is at this nexus between regenerative systems and Cardano. It's kind of funny how I found my way here, but I was originally proposing that regenerative agriculture be a challenge question for the last fund, and then Yoram found me and invited me to Cardano4Climate back in August when it was still really small. And I know that I wouldn't be here doing this as a humble mushroom farmer hosting this conference if it weren't for the participation in this group. And it's just been a labor of love from everybody volunteering their time to make this happen. Apologies for the squeals in the background. It's my baby girl. Anyway, so yeah, and then I've also been working on a blog. You can see the name there. That's sort of occupying that space between regenerative and Cardano, which I've been neglecting thanks to being more active in the group. Next slide. So when it comes to climate, we talk a lot about carbon, but I thought for a minute I would just kind of change the trajectory a little bit and just talk about nitrogen and compare how nitrogen flows in nature versus how we have come to use it in our current food system that we're relying on. So in nature, which is exactly identical to the way it works in regenerative agriculture. Well, if we're starting from the beginning, nitrogen is in an inert form in the atmosphere. It's most of the atmosphere, and then lightning is actually providing enough energy to sequester that nitrogen into a liquid form that can then feed into life. So in nature, that nitrogen is hardly it's very only for short bursts is it typically in this liquid active form, and most of the time it is locked up within life on the microbial level and the macrobial level. So we can see examples of the macro on the left and the micro on the right. So just to really oversimplify things, right? So that nitrogen is in the form of protein in this soil food web, which you can see on the right. That's actually compost, but that's pretty much what it looks like next to the root zone of plants, where you can see the filaments of mycelia in there, the tiny little bacteria. There's archaea. I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, but you get an idea for just the panoply of life that exists in there. And then anyway, those microbes that are all hanging out next to the plants are feeding them exudates, which are typically carbon molecules, to invite all the life forms there. And they die. And when they die, that releases the nitrogen back into a liquid form for a brief time. The plant slurps it up. It moves it into the leaves so it can photosynthesize and continue to grow. And then also we'll concentrate it in the seeds to kind of keep the generations going. Anyway, before those seeds are viable, that bison that you see on the left there is going to come chomp that grass down along with his brothers and sisters and all the generations, huddled together as they are in nature under the threat of predation. And they'll just chew that grass down to the ground, and they'll poop and they'll pee. And here's another time when the nitrogen is in its liquid form, in the form of urine, that you can see that bison peeing there. And I am actually, after I get done talking, I'm going to drop a link to one of Hobbs's TikTok videos where he waxes for a minute about cow pee. Anyway, so then that urine is in a liquid, the nitrogen is in a liquid state for a short time. Some of it goes and it gets sucked up by the plants immediately, but most of it then just goes to help that soil food web to continue to grow. And it's that cycle of life and death, continuous, that builds up soil, which is the ultimate resource base for nature, and I think for us as well. Anyway, if we're going to quickly contrast that with an extractive kind of industrial based system of agriculture that has been around for some decades at this point, we take, instead of lightning, we concentrate energy in the form of burning large amounts of fossil fuels to sequester the nitrogen into a liquid form. We dump that as chemical fertilizer on soil that has basically no life in it, because that life is there to kind of work in the currency of nitrogen. And when you're just artificially dumping it, the life is not, it's not an environment for them to have any use or way to survive. Anyway, it finds its way into plants again, and then some of those plants we eat, sometimes we feed those into animals that are separate from where those plants are grown. And then our pee and the animals' pee becomes this liability, which we just kind of ignore as an externality and let it flow into rivers and to create oceanic dead zones right in the same areas that should be some of the most fertile, biodiverse areas on the planet, where the fresh water meets the salt water. So it's really the difference between understanding that the world is a finite place where the cycle of life is circular, versus just this idea that we have infinite energy in the form of fossil fuels that we can burn, and then that it's just open-ended on both ends. So we just ignore these externalities. But meanwhile, we're realizing now that we live on a finite planet. Next slide. So I just feel like there's a similarity. Oh, yeah, one back, please. Thank you, Nori. There we go. So similar to the way that we just kind of dump chemical fertilizer on a field, I feel like our economic system kind of follows a similar idea, where we just feel like we can keep this thing going. We can somehow pump more and more growth into the system just by dumping fiat money into the system. And just like dumping fertilizer creates this whole cascade of toxicity, I think the same thing happens in economy. So on the bright side, when we transition, which we must, from an industrial extractive food system to regenerative food system, there is this kind of alchemy that happens where instead of these liabilities in the form of pollution being ignored, it really is fertility. So the idea is to contain that fertility, to respect that it exists. And when we do that and we create places for cell membranes to contain that fertility, that's sort of similar to the way that we are honoring sovereign individuals in an economic system. And so one of the challenges that I always think about a lot, and I wouldn't say that there's any solid answers at this point, but hopefully something that we can delve into in our discussion later, is just, I think in this idea of radical inclusion, we sort of have to dilate out this membrane that we're all inside of to contain everything. Just recognizing that we're on a finite planet with circular systems. And so when we do that, no longer is, if we just look at the example of a farmer and a fisherman, the farmer, if they're dumping chemicals and that's killing the soil and the chemicals are flowing down the river and they're messing up the fishing industry downstream. But right now, these different communities are not connected in any kind of way. So if we're being radically inclusive, we're going to bring them both together into a shared economy, find ways of doing that, so that the farmer can benefit from the success of the fisherman for doing the right thing and cultivating soil the proper way, which has its own benefits. And so let's see here. So Cardano, we talk about these crypto spaces as ecosystems, and I think that is useful. And you can hop to the last slide, Nori. Thank you. So I think today we're going to discuss a lot about, what a third generation blockchain like Cardano can do to advance regenerative systems. But I thought it would be interesting just to kind of flip that around and think about what does it mean for an ecosystem like ours to contend with this idea of regenerative systems and find ways to advance them. So I've thrown a bunch up there. I'm not going to go through them here, and it's by no means exhaustive here, but there's some things to chew on. And I'll just highlight the first and the last, which is we have an opportunity to fortify our economic systems by aligning them with ecological systems. So aligning our economy and the way that we relate and share resources amongst ourselves, like in harmony with Mother Nature. And I think when we do that, the potential is just endless. And then finally, I think we should do it because it is a challenge. I mean, Cardano never shied away from asking really, really hard questions. And this is really hard. I mean, regenerative systems, the way nature works is extremely complex. And the way that these economies are evolving is extremely complex and hard to predict where it's going. So it's two really, really complex things that we're trying to bring under one umbrella. But why the hell not? It seems like a fun challenge to me. So I'm going to shut up at this point, and I am going to pass the virtual mic over to Koen van Seijen. So I am really thrilled to be introducing this fellow who I've heard his voice for many, probably hundreds of hours at this point. Investing in regenerative agriculture is just a wonderful podcast. I listen to it while I'm picking mushrooms all the time. And he also has a really great video course that is just a crash course, really tight way of getting to understand regenerative agriculture, and also to think about the finance side. And he has discussions with people that are really doing amazing things in this really, really quickly blossoming field. So Koen, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to you, Tyler, and Yoram, and obviously the whole team for inviting me and organizing this. It's I think last time I tried to call in, but I was on a train somewhere, which was tricky. But thank you so much for giving me some space to share. I'm mostly interested to hear questions and try to unpack some, but I will give a bit of an overview of what led us to this space, because I'm not a farmer and I'm also not a fund manager or an investor, or I'm a very small investor. But I would like to share a bit about the journey. What excites us at the moment is we have a very unique position that we talk, like Tyler said, with a lot of people. It's still very funny to imagine that people actually listen to the podcast, because you record it virtually, like using something like Zoom. So it's just me and the interviewee. But then imagining that somebody is actually picking mushrooms and listening to this is still very humbling, but very interesting as well. We started the podcast honestly because I stumbled upon this soil carbon thing, if we can call it a thing, about 11 years ago now, when I read a chapter of a book on holistic grazing, and especially a few people in Australia that were at that point consultants. So they were working with a lot of ranchers and completely turning around their ranches. And the only thing they changed was the management. So they didn't change any of the weather, obviously, because they weren't able. They didn't change any of the input. Actually, they reduced it drastically. But what they changed was the way these farms were operating. And the results were, I mean, this was text, so I couldn't see photos, but we've since then seen many of these photos of fence line left and right. They were almost magical. And they were talking about setting up a fund, which later became SLM Partners, which is one of the leading investment funds or asset managers in the regen ag space, let's say in the traditional finance world. And I was lucky enough to meet one of the founders that is unfortunately no longer with us when he passed through Amsterdam, and got very, very interested, mainly because of the carbon piece, because I was always interested in food. I'm definitely a foodie, but suddenly I saw agriculture could be part of the solution, and quite a significant one. How big? Still a lot of questions, but it's more than significant. And it was completely ignored by the investors I was working with. I work with a lot of impact investors through Tonic, which is a community of active impact investors. And they always said, oh, we're interested in food and ag. But then if you looked at their portfolio, there was hardly anything in it. So, and a few years down the line, following this space, I decided let's capture these let's capture these conversations and turn them into interviews. And audio was the easiest way to do that, literally, as you need a laptop and a microphone. And that started 5 years ago on the fly. And also I noticed that many people say yes when you ask, can I interview you? And when you say, can I pick your brain for an hour, they might be a bit busy because they were building interesting things. So that led to many people luckily saying yes. And I think we're 160 or 170 interviews further with investors, farmers, fund managers, food companies, soil scientists, everything that we find interesting basically in this absolutely massive transition. And since then, learned a lot about that it's not about the carbon, or it's about the carbon, but it's about much more than the carbon. This touches on ownership structures, where obviously you guys spend a lot of time on this, touches on nutrient density in healthcare, as we're still in the end phase of a pandemic. This touches on inequality. This touches on land access. It touches on a lot more than just the food we eat, or just between brackets. So I've been fully absorbed by the soil carbon or the soil world since then. And what really excites us, or what we try to do also with the video course and with the podcast, it's all pay what you think it's worth. So it's all accessible for all, as long as you have an internet connection, is to try to, both on the movement side, so a lot of people are building things in the space, could be farms, could be food companies, etc., to try to, I wouldn't say teach, but nudge the language of finance, because finance is a very interesting tool. And we see that the extractive agriculture industry is very, very good at using finance. And so the least we can do is become as good or better and start using the tool. There's a lot of money out there in all kinds of different forms and shapes. And quite a bit of that would be great if it comes down to earth and be, let's say, doing something. Could be anything from planting productive trees to doing large scale regeneration, et cetera, et cetera. So my interest became from how do we use the tool of finance to regenerate at scale. And most ecosystems, most land you see around you, depending a bit where you are, but almost everything is severely degraded and has an enormous potential, like Tyler was saying, an enormous potential of life, of biomass, of income streams, of food, obviously, of water, of materials, et cetera. And we're tapping maybe a few percent in most cases, especially if you're looking at large monoculture land. Doesn't mean this transition is easy. It doesn't mean but it's I would say, a very worthwhile one to do. And so we try to talk to the builders. We try to follow the people that are building things in the space, mainly looking at 3/4 large areas, which I will briefly highlight, and then I will stop so you can ask questions if that's interesting. We look a lot at food as medicine, so nutrient density of food, which is a very hot topic at the moment, as we're obviously in a huge health crisis, but we're in a much bigger one when we look at all the food-related diseases we have. So the connection between healthy soil, healthy gut system, healthy people, and healthy ecosystem is something I'm very interested in. It could be a huge lever for many people to get interested in this, because your health is something we care a bit more about than soil. And there's a lot of research coming out, a lot of interesting companies being built, and it feels very, very early, but it also feels like one of the big ones that could move quite a lot of interest into the space. The second one is landscape scale regeneration. Like, how do we get this to island scale, watershed, regions, valleys, etc., and not just farm by farm? And what kind of network, or what kind of how do we figure out what to plant where and why if our resources are constrained? So we do quite a few interviews around the satellite side of things, how to do keyline design at large scale, how to calculate returns at a landscape scale, which are all, none of them are easy, but these are all things where technology can play a huge role. We look quite a bit at ownership models, and obviously I'm absolutely not an expert on blockchains, but there it touches easily upon the huge challenges of land ownership, of ownership of companies, and it also touches on the very interesting sides of the current financial system where, let's say, long-term vision and long-term ownership are not always the same thing. And of course, on the liquidity side of things, I'm very interested in hearing more about that. We look a lot at ecosystem services, touches a lot. There's a lot happening there, and I think the overlap with certain blockchains. And what I find interesting is not necessarily the carbon piece, but the biodiversity and the water piece, and then also the nutrient piece. So there's a lot of hype around carbon. It doesn't go away, I think, anytime soon. But let's focus on the bigger picture, as carbon is, as somebody says very nicely, almost a currency in the soil and fluctuates quite a bit. But there's a lot of attention, so let's capitalize on that. Let's use that. But the story is much deeper than that. And so we try to follow those, plus a lot of other sectors within, or themes within this niche of a niche, always looking at the finance side of things, always looking at the scale side of things. And we're very, very lucky that we became sort of the hub of this niche where people that are thinking about building things at scale, what kind of resources they need, etc., are listening and are reaching out and then invite us for things like this. And as I said, the big issues which keep coming back, like current funding models, Tyler, his last slide was very much on point, are a challenge. 10-year funds are very difficult. Liquidity is a challenge, etc., etc. So it's very interesting to be here, and I will stop at that. I saw an interesting, the microbiome is the next frontier, absolutely. The soil microbiome is almost a direct mirror of your microbiome. So it's there's a very interesting connection on local, regional, and fresh, which we're only just starting to unveil. So it's exciting times.
Awesome. Thank you, Koen. Yeah, I guess we should all get our hands in the soil, and don't wash our hands before we eat, right?
Depends what kind of soil, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I think we are ready to hop into our presentations. Is that right? I don't have the agenda in front of me to remind me, but yeah, why don't we, Hobbs, why don't you take the mic?
All right, awesome, excellent. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much, Tyler, Koen. Thank you guys very much. Also, I don't have really a presentation. I just have some thoughts, and I kind of prepared them, but a few of the things that you guys were talking about sparked some thoughts. There's a couple of themes that you both sort of got into there that I wanted to add a little bit of a spin on. One I thought was really interesting was the analogy of the economy and the ecology. I use those to compare a lot of times. And one example that I use particularly with reference to monoculture agriculture is if you were rolling into a town and this town had 10,000 people in it, and every single person in that town was a 45-year-old mechanic, do you think the economy of that town would be very healthy? Of course it wouldn't. So that's exactly what we're doing with monoculture and monocrops. I mean, it totally removes the interplay with all the various parts of biology, microbiology, macrobiology. And so that's just I thought it was interesting you both talked on that. And there's also something also very interesting that you guys both mentioned. I believe it was Tyler who mentioned alchemy. And then when you were, Koen, when you were talking about the holistic management book you read, which was probably Alan Savory, is that what it was? No, different one. Okay, very good. There was sort of an element of like, what I would say is the world is alive, not in just like a collection of systems, biological systems operating, but it has like an awareness, an intelligence, and a self-awareness. Like, it's like when you start putting the pieces together the way that they should be, suddenly it wakes up. You know, it's more than the sum of its biological components. And once you, in my particular case, when you put a group of herbivores, grass eaters, cows in their ancestral migratory form, then somehow the land just wakes up and it almost sends out like a call to other forms of life. Anyway, I've already probably taken too much time there, but I want to just go ahead and run through these thoughts really quick that I had. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is why regenerative is the word that stuck for farming and ranching, sort of in the image of nature. And obviously people have used all kinds of words: biodynamic farming, permaculture, total grazing, holistic management. And I think that the reason that regenerative stuck is because it's sort of a really clever critique of the last 10,000 years of civilizational systems. And it contains within it the seeds of the next 10,000. So, I mean, we would instinctively know that if a new system is regenerative, then the old system must be degenerative. And it's obvious to anyone paying attention that our natural systems cannot afford to degenerate any further. And so that puts us at a pretty interesting point in the cycle of civilization. And we've all heard the phrase that you can either break down or you can break through. And that's where we are right now. Trying to use this period of crisis civilizationally to give birth to the next phase of human civilization. And, you know, I think that I think we're breaking through. The word regenerative is really sticky, and it seems to be the word of choice because it speaks directly to that transformation. It speaks to a reformation of not only the way that we produce food, but a resurrection of the human spirit, a reunion of humanity and the rest of the natural world. And obviously my favorite part, being out in the field all the time, is it's a rekindling of the bond that we've shared since the beginning of time with nature, as part of nature, that's only been severed in very recent human history. As far as I can tell, blockchain is the digital cousin to regenerative ag's analog technology, and there are just too many similarities to overlook the comparison. And right now, we find ourselves partnered in the throes of reordering human civilization. I think the two of us, regenerative agriculture and blockchain together, are really going to kill off the old world and give birth to the new one. So the question really that we're talking about today is not what regenerative ag is and what blockchain is, but what they mean. So yeah, we're going to talk about fixing the soil, regulating the climate, talk about asking less of the planet, giving more. But really, this is the thing that really excites me about what I'm doing. And this is the animating principle of why I do what I do, is that this is the possibility, what we're talking about is the possibility of bringing about the highest state of human existence that we can possibly imagine. And that state, as far as I can tell, is characterized by a return to our primal connectedness to nature, while still being able to harness the power we've been given by the technology that our big monkey brains have brought about. So, you know, in closing, blockchain and regenerative ag are parallel forces that, you know, are both born out of this new consciousness emerging across the planet at this really amazingly fascinating time in human history. And while it may look dark out there, especially, you know, I think today is very interesting in terms of how dark it may look out there occasionally. I couldn't be more thrilled and fascinated to see what's on the horizon and beyond. You know, there's no telling what great things we're going to create. Thank you, guys.
Amen, Hobbs. That was beautiful. Yeah, the world that we have to create, it's not just a challenge. It's you know, moving towards a way of being that is much more beautiful, I think. And I think people will come around because we have no choice at the end of the day. All right, next up we have Yosef Akhtman. He is a satellite expert, and he's going to give us a beyond bird's eye view, I guess a satellite's eye view. Take it away, Yosef.
Let's see if we can unmute him. That might be a problem.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I was sure I wasn't on mute. Okay, thank you. So I had a few slides, but I don't necessarily need them. But if you have them available, we just create some structure.
Nori. Yeah.
In any case, I mean, if you can't bring them up, otherwise it's okay. So basically, I mean, unfortunately, it's a very unusual day, and somehow I had to completely change my presentation because I'm very much connected to the situation that is unfolding currently in Ukraine, and I just couldn't avoid this. I was on it. I have family in Ukraine, and we were trying today to evacuate them from a city that is being bombed. It's really unusual. So I apologize if I bring some of this darkness into the discussion, which is a really wonderful discussion about really bright and wonderful things. But I think maybe some of this reality needs to be kept in check while we are talking about the bright future, I would say. And so I'm a scientist in remote sensing and Earth observations. And obviously this is a very incredibly sophisticated technology that has been developed for the first and foremost for defense and military applications. Enormous amount of money has been invested into this technology, into the deployment of satellites, of imaging satellites. And the primary use objective of this technology is to provide evidence, is to provide intelligence, right? And also you can generate some really beautiful images. And Yoram asked me to show some images of beautiful satellite imagery. However, all I could think about is to show, I don't know whether this is loading, but yeah, it's an image of a recent buildup of military, of Russian military on the Ukraine border. And this is where it becomes complicated, because this is where kind of technology does its job at its best. The evidence for the Russian invasion have been the absolutely crystal clear 100% evidence have been publicized and interpreted 100% correctly by the US intelligence already for weeks. And still everybody doubted it, and nobody seemed to expect that this is going to happen. And this is where I see this huge challenge that kind of it's erosion of the strengths of facts and truth and evidence itself. And I think this is especially as we move in towards this virtual meta reality, I think we have to make sure that the value of truth, the meaning of truth, evidence, and scientific method does not erode, because this is my feeling is that this is what is to a large extent happening in the present world. So if you move to the next slide, there's a explosion of activity in Earth observation sector. Again, billions upon billions of dollars are invested in new satellites. There's exponential growth in the sector in the last few years. And yet, right now, nothing much, no real impact is happening right now. So there's obviously everybody agrees that there's a tremendous value, potential value, and economic value, societal value of this technology going forward. However, it turns that so traditionally it comes from this background of military applications, where you had human analysts that would just look at these images, as is the case still in the, if I don't know, CIA needs to detect military buildup, there are human analysts that are sitting in front of these images, and they are making interpretation, and they are writing reports. However, this is something that is absolutely does not work for any other application because it's just way too expensive. So you need to automate things. However, it turns out that most of these interesting systems, natural systems in particular, if we are talking about agriculture or natural monitoring of natural environment, they are very complex. And so any automation becomes, or of interpretation of the satellite images becomes very challenging and complex. And so despite the fact there are many companies that are trying to deploy various services in agriculture, in environmental monitoring, in mining, in a variety of different sectors, it turns out that this is much more difficult than anybody expected. And if you go to the next slide, so the main challenge is to find this overlap between the three classes, between what is technically feasible. There are quite a few things that are technically feasible, but then they are unlikely to be economically viable. So things that are technically feasible are usually not economically viable or not scalable. Or things that are scalable and economically viable, it turns out that they are not, technologically, they don't really work. So finding this elusive overlap between technical feasibility, economic viability, and scalability turns to be very difficult. I feel that there is some lesson to learn here also about some of the topics that we are discussing here. And if you move to the next slide, so I just found one of these similar pictures of regenerative finance, which is very much what we are discussing here. And this explosion of projects and teams that are building things in the sector, and I'm not an expert myself in this sector, but I anticipate that similar challenge will occur here, because finding things that are technologically feasible and economically viable and scalable at the same time will turn to be very difficult. And to a large extent, this is where so Earth observation and remote sensing is one of the ways, but either if it's remote sensing, Earth observation, whether it's satellites or any other method of evidence, collection of evidence, and monitoring and measurement and verification is absolutely crucial for any such project. So if you move to the next slide, it just, I mean, I'm summarizing here few points which may sound trivial, but I feel they're very important, particularly at this time. Again, as we are moving towards the virtual and meta and all of these things, it's very important to remember, and the speakers that came before me, I'm super happy that there are people that are really very grounded. It's absolutely a wonderful discussion to me. And so to me, reality still matters, truth matters, logic matters, and science matters. And the way to empower and to keep track of these things that matter, we need measurement and verification for any of these projects, accountability, and focus on small baby steps. So building things maybe that are less grand and perhaps a little bit less ambitious, but actually work, and then growing them gradually, step by step. Because in my view, regeneration, unfortunately, is always a slow, gradual process, unfortunately. Only destruction, like it happened today, happens very fast and on a huge scale. So thank you for your for your attention. And Slava Ukraine. Yeah.
Thank you, Yosef. Yeah, heart goes out to your family. I mean, it's pretty amazing that you're here. I think it's a testament to, you know, how important this work is that we're all doing. But for our part, just send our prayers to the people in that part of the world and just pray for peace. I mean, this geopolitical system is an outshoot ultimately of this agricultural system. I think, you know, when we pick up a sai, we can use that to cut grass, and we can use it against each other. So let's just pray that we can make that sai obsolete. So thank you.
Yep. Tyler, I want to add one thing. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the family and the war, but I want to mention actually about the work of Yosef just for a second. In the last 10 years, basically, Yosef is dedicating all his time to solve these challenging issues with satellites. So how can you actually build satellites for agriculture specifically? How can you, at scale, have technological solution at scale and low price that actually do to measure, have to create this transparency and traceability, basically dedicating his life for that. And he's actually, didn't show it here now, but he actually have some technology breakthrough that we hope to bring also to the Cardano blockchain, that to be able to achieve that. Basically to analyze agriculture, tree planting, forest conservation, and agriculture. For example, land borders is an example. It's a huge issue for agriculture, land identity. So some of the technologies he built approach that. So just wanted to add this part for his work.
Just to say, I changed I originally planned to talk about more specific and relevant things, but I just had to change and also presentation, and I'll definitely will be very happy to elaborate on more specific things, perhaps on a more normal day next time.
No, understandable. I mean, yeah, and hopefully finish soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yosef.
Yeah, I mean, satellites are such a critical piece of all this that maybe we'll get into a little bit during our discussion, and definitely keep the conversation going. So feel free, Yosef, to drop in a link for how folks can communicate with you after the conference. And next up, we have Genty, Frédéric, Samvura, and boy, he does a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Genty. Thank you.
Thank you, merci. Yes, so my name is Frédéric, known as Genty. I'm a member of the WADA team. I'm the lead DRC representative, and I also have Megan here, who's going to represent WADA as well. And then the DRC also happened to be a business owner, and I was the business itself. It's a higher education institution, the equivalent of a college in the US. So you can go to the next slide. So again, in the WADA, I'm the business lead who tries to find opportunities. And in DRC as well, I'm the head of the ISDERGEL, which is Institut Supérieur de Développement Rural des Grands Lacs. Next slide. So Cardano in the DRC is quite recent. I would say we have been involved in many activities since I personally joined. There had been a lot of cryptocurrency activities in DRC, mainly blockchain. But with Cardano, we have had so many activities that on a daily basis, we have meetups like we have the hub through WADA, which has weekly meetings where we teach people, young students, to learn how to learn Haskell, to learn how to program using Bluetooth and Linux also in general, and also acquainted themselves to English. So we have like these three approaches. And we also hosted the last year an in-person Cardano summit in Goma, which I attended. And since then, even to this day, the t-shirts, the posters, they do happen to pass around. I see them, a few still are still okay. So people are still keeping interest on Cardano. They often ask, what is it? When did it happen? When is the next summit? So Cardano is still very present. In the college itself, we are implementing deeds for our graduates. We had already, since the installation of the college in 2002, we've had around 8,000 students who graduated. So we hope to get their deeds, digital identities, ready and available through the Atala Prism deeds. And that was through a Catalyst funded project as well. Thanks again for the support from the Cardano community. Another project that the college is supporting is to host a stake pool within the school. The stake pool itself is almost running, it's live, the server is available, the solar panels are installed. So within a few days, you should see the Goma stake pool live, representing the DRC. The aim of the stake pool is to hope to partner with the Virunga Foundation. I know them in another way, but I have not approached them specifically about the stake pool. But within the Goma surroundings, there is ecotourism. Tourists come to visit the volcanoes, they trek and go up the volcano to see the lava lake. They go visit the gorillas. So my aim was to basically create some kind of tokens which can be redeemed to go and participate in those tourism activities. So this should be straightforward. It could be just money handed over in terms of token redemption. So Virunga Foundation, we're close to them. So it's just a matter of formalizing the agreement. We also expand the WADA ecosystem. Again, the college has many rooms which are usually not used. So in terms of co-working spaces, people who have the Cardano token will be able to access co-working spaces, point of sale of cryptocurrencies from the hub, and in the future, possibly ID validations and onboarding of new deeds. In terms of barriers, what we noticed first is the language. Yes, people are eager to learn about Cardano, but the whole content, most of the content is in English. So I'm just happen to speak English and French, but some other people are very talented, are kind of held back by the languages. Yeah, energy is still very much an issue. Energy in terms of electricity, and specifically, and internet reliability. It's available. No, it's costly, and even if you pay, you may not get it. So it's just not reliable as of yet. We are hoping with the SpaceX dishes, we're going to go back to the VSATs alternatives. It's still possibly an option. Household incomes are very low, so which means the amount of discounting of what is climate, again, I'm gonna come back to that later. Renewable energies, again, are relatively costly compared to easily accessible sources of energy. Charcoal from the forest, firewoods, even in urban centers, using electricity and using charcoal or using gas, charcoal will always be the cheaper. So you will find that even if you could use a stove, you end up using a charcoal stove instead of using a gas or electrical stove. Next slides, please. Congo climate and blockchain in general. I will say that when I heard about this topic, I said, possibly this is a matter also of timing. The DRC currently, is it this year or last year, there had been a climate analysis which actually found that the Congolese basin, the Congo basin, which extends to Cameroon and DRC in that region near the equator, is currently the largest carbon sink in the world. And when I heard the news, I'll say, well, too bad, because this forest is not protected by anybody. Like the government doesn't really have a coherent policy to protect the forest. It's just a matter of lack of access. If the DRC has no roads, that is what is protecting the forest. It's not really, it's a matter of making the roads accessible, and then that forest is gone quickly. So I think the timing is key. The DRC is still a matter of looking into alternatives, but again, it being the carbon sink, it's more like because it's not accessible and not because it is trying to be. Acceptance, the timing again in terms of Congo and blockchain and climate is that the population in general is not really faced by the technology. They know what mobile money is. They're quite easily They understand the concept of virtual resources, virtual funds. So paying them through a mobile money, paying them through the blockchain for them, that will be quite easy. They do understand everything. And people who are in the rural area where they only have a mobile phone, they kind of understand the concept of having digital funds. Complementarity, blockchain applications can serve multiple purposes. Like you can find that the same way you collect funds, that's the same way you disburse them. And also that's also the same way you certify as to what the action had been done. So, and this can be useful in the applications I'm going to mention ahead. Next slide, please. Yes, so sustainability and the blockchain, again, I'll speak specifically to the DRC, but it could be applicable to Africa in general and the world in general in some cases, is that the trust is the first element you have. Like sponsors and beneficiaries can work together without intermediaries to make it seem as if possibly the funds were not allocated properly. There had been some kind of bias in allocation. With the blockchain, the sponsor especially can be well implicated in the management of and the application of their project they support. So that makes it even more attractive. Decentralization, there are cases where, for example, like toll fees are centrally managed by the public agency, which doesn't have any incentive to be accountable. And again, when you have decentralization, then you can make funds available for the use case instead of centralizing it. Accountability, it goes back to the whole, for example, when Elon Musk was asking, how can you prove that with so much money you can ward the world hunger? So accountability with the blockchain is easily, not so much easily, but at least it aims to be. You can basically avoid inefficiencies in allocation and traceability. Scalability with little funds, with access again, if somebody has access to internet, Wi-Fi or any mobile network, they can also use to scale an application. Like the same application you use in DRC, should it be effective, you can scale it and apply it to Cameroon or some other countries without having to go through much explanation. Because currently, some good practices in terms of funding take time. Yes?
I'm sorry, but we still have two more speakers.
Yes.
And we're approaching the top of the hour. Just
perfect. I have two points and then one slide. So in terms of low point of entry, again, small amounts can be exchanged to the blockchain, and that can make that the most poor person can also be implicated in your project. Speed of transactions, that's the common blockchain at rates. Next slide. Okay, yes. So some applications quickly, ecotourism, as I mentioned, the stake pool, promoting the preservation of the environment through incentives. Soil preservations, like you can fund protection of the soil, like in Kinshasa or in rural areas. Hydropowers, funding little project in DRC is relatively cheap. Like things can be cheaper as 15,000 to create a little micro plants. Mitigations, again, firewood is the cheapest, but there could be a way to subsidize alternatives to it. And again, with the blockchain, as we see in countries such as Venezuela and Ecuador and some other countries in Latin America, DRC has an abundance of volcanoes. Near Goma, we have 2 active volcanoes. We have gas, methane gas, wind power, solar, which can again benefit the sustainability and climate promotion. So that was it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Genty. And let's pass it over to Megan and Manfo, who are in Cameroon, or traveling to Cameroon.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so happy to be here. So I'll just quickly, I am Megan. For WADA, I am in charge of events and education. And I'm also joined today with Manfo, my partner, husband. Usually we're on the same camera, so we're doing different screens today, but I'll allow him to jump in at any point if he wants to. We're going to talk to you guys today a little bit about what we've been up to in Cameroon since we moved there almost a year ago. So we can go to next. Do you guys have my slides or do you need me to share? share my screen, if that's okay.
We need to make you host. Just hang in there.
Sorry.
No worries. We're part of Catalyst. Things will break and we
Sure.
go with the flow.
Yeah, so I can be talking while that's
Go for it.
happening.
We'll figure it out.
You should be able to share.
So we're in Cameroon, as I said, we have our WADA hub here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So the WADA hub is focusing on IT and agriculture. So I'm going to just give kind of a big picture of everything that we're doing. The purpose behind our hub is really about making healthy and nutrient-dense food accessible. I put reintroducing regenerative farming practices because a lot of the things that we're learning as these new up-and-coming techniques are things that Manfo will tell you, his grandmother was doing on the farm. So kind of re-encouraging that, those kind of practices, and also encouraging transformation on a local level. So much value gets lost in terms of the originating farmers because they're just exporting raw materials instead of transforming coffee or cacao themselves. And then, another core motivation is to educate on distributed ledger technology and then integrate the two, IT and agriculture. So here's our team. We have sort of the IT side and then the farm side. So Manfo, Didier, and myself are kind of in both. We go to the farm as well as do the IT stuff, but we also have about 4 people who are living on the farm. So there's some pictures of us. All the pictures in here are taken on our farm. So you can get some overview. So in terms of the IT side, we have set up an IT hub in Douala. We have the physical hub. We've been contributing to WADA events, and we have launched our Haskell Plutus DLT training program. On the farm side, we have about 100 acres of land, and we've started developing, all those buzzwords we were talking about earlier. But basically we're regrowing a food forest, and we're starting with seedlings, and we've planted about 2,000 trees so far. Or sorry, probably 3,000. I looked on here. So much has happened in like the 1 month I haven't been over there. And while the trees are low, we're sort of maximizing on the open ground to plant other cover crops to take advantage of the soil. So just to give you guys like a little peek into what's actually happening. So in terms of structures, we have built a little cabin. Everything that we built, for the most part, we used materials from the land. So like wood coming from trees in the forest. Obviously you can see the roofing here was something that and the solar panel. I mean, we didn't make that. But we have a little housing facility with sleeping arrangements and also equipment storage, a little compost toilet. In terms of other compost, we have a biochar oven, I guess you would call it. And then we've also got some vermicompost. And then we're constructing a sort of structure for more traditional compost as well. In terms of animals, we've got a couple of cats, chickens, and so on the far right, you'll see that's our chicken coop being set up, and we're getting ready to add a pig or 2 in the next months. We also have a pretty expensive tree nursery where we're starting, kind of experimenting everything, starting with seeds that we've bought, seeds that we've eaten, or well, I won't say eaten, but foods we've eaten, and we're saving the seeds. kind of trying it all, seeing what works. In terms of irrigation on our land, we do have a small river that's flowing along the bottom. And we've installed a water tower. So we're pumping water up from the river for some of we're not watering everything. The climate in Cameroon is pretty tropical. So we do have a lot of natural rainwater, but for some of the more certain crops we're watering. And then I'll just close up with, why are we doing this? This is all really for the next generation. So there's Manfo and myself right there. And that's our youngest son. So it's really all for the next generation to have, food, and also to kind of restore the natural order of how the earth should be. I don't know if I have too much time, but just in terms of where we're looking to go over the next year. So I've showed you so far what we've done kind of this past year. And in the upcoming year, we'll start sort of more with our education on the farm. This summer, we're hoping to start some summer programs for local kids to come and learn on the farm, as well as launching a restaurant to advertise and also encourage other people to come in. And then finally, linking the IT and agriculture in terms of land mapping and other farm planning things. So Manfo, I'll give you a chance if I forgot anything to jump in here before I close out.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And again, thank you one more time to Cardano4Climate, the whole team behind this initiative. So I just want to add that this is a pilot project. We are starting with 3 hectares, and we want to make sure that things work out. And one thing we are really focusing on is, an incremental approach. Megan shared the irrigation system, for example. We started with a pump, and our intention is to move on to the rain pump system that actually uses air to, push water up the land. You can see on the far right there. We've been running some experiment on the farm, and they look really conclusive. So again, the whole point of doing this is really going back to ancient ways of farming and making sure that people are being fed the food that actually cure them. Just like one of us said, food is actually medicine. I just wanted to add that.
Awesome. So thanks so much for listening, and I will now pass the mic on to the next person.
Cool. Thank you, Megan and Manfo. It's cool to see what you guys are doing on the ground there, living very close to the earth. Seems like a great place to raise some kids too. So we will introduce our final speaker or speakers, because I know we have a few people here from the Planetary Care team. So Forrist and team, take it away.
Great, thank you. Shall I show the slides, or were you going to do that?
I can bring them up here in just a second.
Up.
Go ahead.
Are you able to see it there?
Yep.
Great. So thank you, and particularly thank you, Melanie and Tyler, for all the orchestration it takes to put together and the messages that are here. Certainly trying to have an impact on the farming system, the food system globally is really quite an audacious challenge that we have in front of us, and yet so extremely important as well for that. So in terms of planetary care, we're basically envision, we could go to the next slide. And so basically what we've realized over the last couple of years since founding is it's really about the people and developing the structure to enable bringing forth quite a number of people and professionals to be able to move this forward. So this is just a quick kind of structure outline of what we're doing with Planetary Care. We can go to the next slide. So altogether, our focus is really on building a collaborative commons. We're a unique type of structure that's a legal combination of a nonprofit and a for-profit, and it is designed as a multi-stakeholder collaborative. So originally, all the focus was really, or a lot of it has envisioned becoming a DAO. And now it seems that the technology is really moving and getting to the place so that we are developing that. The core areas is truly having the passion for creating a systemic and cultural change so the farmers can convert back to the regenerative agriculture that's really been seen, while at the same time bringing in the new technology and a lot of the different proven methods that are there. Our core principle includes diversity and inclusion of all the stakeholders in the space, as it's truly critical for the whole health of the system. We can go to the next slide. So our current stage in terms of the focusing on a DAO initiative that we have going on right now is the development of our tokenomics and white papers. So we basically have a tokenomics white paper being developed and a regenerative ag white paper. The focus is really to try to accomplish something that some colleagues of ours are doing with the ocean and cleaning up plastic and creation of the plastic recovery credits in order to be able to use the benefits that you can get in the crypto world and with a DAO, while at the same time being able to move funds into full measurable impact on the planet. For us, we see doing that to really change regenerative agriculture, you have to focus on bioregional local food supply chains. Here in the United States, which is largely where we're focused right now, the industrial agriculture and chemical agriculture has concentrated and largely made it very difficult for the farmers that want to scale beyond the size of selling in farmers markets and such, and we call that ag in the middle. So this is an area that we really see that the funding out of the DAO that we're developing will be able to support. At this point, we're also looking at recognizing of how do we put together a way so that it's got the compensation for the team, both current and future, connected to future tokens, and really recognizing that we want to give in connection and consistency with our sociocratic constitution, which is connected into our organization, is setting up roles, badges, proposals, voting, things of this nature that Haifa.earth, for those that haven't seen or come across this, has really spent quite a bit of time developing over the last few years and is soon going to open up for other DAOs to do this. We're holding kind of a 12-month goal on this. And as I mentioned, for the DAO to create a circular economy, and it basically is being able to cycle the funding that comes, a portion of it that comes from the DAO into these communities to really fill the funding gap that's required. But connecting that to direct impact, whether these are carbon credits or from water retention or water quality or biodiversity. And eventually we do see, certainly with the nutrient density being a key factor for health, being able to see new credits that will be developed as we really regenerate local communities. And so for this, we'll go to the next slide, and I'll go ahead and pass it over to David, who will talk a bit about and has really been leading our tokenomics.
Hey guys, thank you for having me here. I'm David. I'll keep things short and sweet so I know we're running past the time here. But basically the main question that I'm trying to tackle here is how do we bridge the gap between investors and actually making that impact to transform these farms and local supply food chains so that they can become regenerative and sustainable. And the system we've designed is essentially a treasury-backed currency. So we're trying to create a store of value here that retains its value over time, no matter what's happening to the network, so that investors can feel comfortable investing in something, knowing that they're having a positive impact in the world and it's going to retain its value over time. So we've created a treasury-backed deflationary currency. It would be the first of its kind, to my knowledge. We have seen treasury-backed currencies becoming popular, except the problem is they're inflationary. So they're constantly being diluted and they don't hold their value over time. So with a deflationary currency, it's guaranteed that we have a backing price and that prices can only increase over time. So we're going to be building out our business model and we're going to be funneling this revenue into this treasury. And in addition to the treasury being built up, a portion of this income is going to be distributed to other high impact players within the ecosystem to reward them for the positive impact that they're having. And we're going to do that by using smart NFTs. So users are going to be able to stake their tokens with a particular organization or project. And according to the impact that they're having, they're going to get a boost on that staking when they hold their smart NFT. And yes, there's a lot of innovation happening here, and there's a lot of ways that we can create value. And by building this treasury, there's so many things that we can do to forward our mission. For example, we can create a decentralized bank to provide liquidity for the entire refi ecosystem, as well as create a DeFi suite to entice investors to really get into this space and bring it up to speed with cutting edge cryptocurrency investing. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on here, and really excited about where we're headed. But yeah, thank you again for having us here.
Cool, thank you guys. I know you're doing so much stuff and it's a challenge to compact that into a short presentation, but we appreciate it. And I think there's going to be a lot of folks that want to talk more about the tokenomics and the DAO. The DAO is something that our group is working towards as well in Little Fish and a foundation, which I've been a little bit absent from that discussion, but a lot of people here that can fill in the gaps. So what do we have next on the slideshow? A call to action. So we try to end the main rooms of these conferences with a small call to action. So this one, since we're talking about farming and food, you can flip to the next slide, Nori. I was thinking if you're not already connected to a local farmer, especially for your protein, get to know a local farmer, see how they're raising their crops or their animals, and just start to align your own gut with the earth. And then also, as far as our community, one little thing that we kind of tried as a little blip was a little communal fast. I'm not sure if everybody heard about that, but a few of us participated in it, and it's just something I think would be cool to, Cardano is chugging away at this steady pulse of epochs, and maybe there's a way that we can all kind of align ourselves. We're all over the globe, and one way is to kind of suffer and go through some spiritual experiences together. So that's all I got. We are going to do some 1-minute pitches for breakout rooms, and I think we have a lot of rooms that we can fill So if any of our speakers want to do a breakout room, just give us a little pitch, and yeah, who wants to jump in?
I'm happy to. One thing that I didn't talk about actually, and after listening to all these speakers, is that I didn't really even say who I am or what I do. I'm a regenerative rancher. I built a business in Central Oregon around selling beef direct to the consumer and rehabilitating degraded ground. We just moved our operation to a ranch in Deep East Texas, so we're learning about a different ecology. Another degraded ranch in Deep East Texas. So, and we're rebuilding our direct-to-consumer market here. So, yeah, I guess I would be happy to do a breakout room. However, I do want to check out the Ethiopia thing. Oh, the other thing is that I have 180,000 followers on TikTok. So basically the messaging of this whole thing is something that I'm really experienced with. And the pushback from the conventional agriculture industry is also something that I'm very experienced with. So if you guys want to talk at all about, you know, what it actually is like to try to get these things to happen in the real world, and the hatred that you will get and as a result of it, you know, certainly we can talk about that. But I really do want to check in on the Ethiopia room as well. So I'm not sure what the best way to do that is.
Thanks for kicking us off, because I totally jumped the gun and I forgot about the thing I was most excited about, which is our expert panel discussion. So before we get to breakout rooms, let's take some time, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and just open it up to our experts to have a dialogue. I mean, so many different things were brought up. I have a few things circled, but why don't we just jump into whatever comes to mind first. And if you're in the audience, myself included, just drop a question into chat. And or we could just jump in with what Hobbs left us with, which is, you know, we're working against some powerful forces in the legacy industrial agriculture system, economic system, geopolitical system. And, you know, honestly, like I feel like climate change is going to be one of these issues that the powers that be are going to leverage to maybe not all the best ends. And we can kind of see the way that the world is going politically. And yeah, so I don't know, any thoughts about that?
Can you hear me? I wanted to ask Genty from DRC WADA. He has present all the points, but I missed one point, which is decentralized governance. Is there any work they do to affect that? If Genty, if he can.
Yes, no. One element of blockchain, especially as an African, is that we hope blockchain to avoid the inefficiencies of nation states. So things such as DAO. I personally am involved in trying to put blockchain into the management of political parties, given that that's where the inefficiency actually is born. So for me, blockchain is what destroys the nation, because those borders, you know, I spoke about Congolese forest, but the forest in Congo should not be Congolese. It should be some forest in the world. And people who want to protect it need to protect it. It doesn't need to be a Congolese to protect it. So no, the DAO is something which we think about, but it's really, really hard to implement for the moment. But yes, the goal is to go to reach it.
Maybe related issue, and also this is something that I constantly think about. If you have this system and you have a DAO, and you have these different groups that have certain decision power, then more and more I feel the truth is a consensus, right? So what most of the, I don't know, whoever has the most, or a group that has decision power, whatever consensus they have, this is the truth. And more I feel that this doesn't need to be any correlation between any evidence and whatever is considered as truth in any of these distributed organizations. And I feel that this is a huge issue, and I can't even start thinking of how this can be resolved. I don't feel that the systems have some kind of input, or people don't think enough about inputs of evidence that can somehow differentiate between what is really true and what is not, because it's all about people deciding that something is truth, and then maybe voting and they deciding that this is what we believe is true and something else is not true. And this is a huge problem to me, again, because I think that there is actual reality out there and there is actual truth out there. And how do we make sure that this truth matters to any of these organizations? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I certainly do. Part of the problem that you're never really going to get around is that people make decisions. The vast majority of people make decisions based on emotions. And one of the problems that the regenerative community really has is that we get so tied down in the data that when we start talking to people, their eyes glaze over and their eyes roll back in their head. So it's the solution, as far as I've been able to tell, and this is from a branding standpoint, is that we have to create an easy, the people who are really, as you say, buried in the data and actually what does work and what is true and what is real, have to create an easy entry point into a bigger conversation. And, you know, for instance, that's why Apple is called Apple instead of Macintosh technological products, right? Because an Apple is easy, it's straightforward. And so that's an easy entry point into a whole technological world. So one of the things that we really need to think about and really focus on is creating a really easy entry point that might then give birth to a bigger conversation where people actually will then begin to care about what the truth really is.
Sure, but it's all still talking to the, and obviously emotions is a very important part of the human nature and a lot of things. But what is lacking for me, and again, this is not new, this have been there forever, this challenge, but how do you build any verification mechanisms into this that somehow pull these decisions towards the truth? Because again, I feel that a lot of these communities, and I've been, because I'm interested in the subject, I've been talking to a lot of people, they are completely disconnected from reality, and more so, especially with a lot of all of these tokenomics based communities, where a lot is based on hype. And so people have an argument, why this have value? Because everybody is talking about and everybody believes in it. And why everybody believes in it? Because it has a lot of value. And there is no grounding to this cycle of belief.
Yosef,
yeah,
I'm going to interrupt. Just because I know the community you're involved in, Catalyst itself has these minds grappling with this, connecting the truth in a decentralized way to people. Take that burden off your shoulders.
Okay.
Do what you love. It is happening. And I feel like our community, Cardano4Climate, we are the eyes and ears and heart of what is going on there. This is a place you can come and make these connections. I know for a fact there are people like Stephen Wittenhall in Catalyst and Simon who are working on GitHub. You know, and recording things. Charles Hoskinson himself is very science-based, peer-reviewed papers. You know, this is a system that works towards that. And I think our job is connecting the use cases, the onboarding, you know, and making it possible for every average Melanie to come along and join this system. So be encouraged. It's happening in parallel. And we know parallel lines in science do not converge, but if you change your perspective, they do.
Sure.
So be encouraged.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Back to you, Tyler.
Okay, I guess so. Well, are there any, it'd be cool to hear from somebody that really can speak on the technology and how you know, with the tooling that Cardano has, one can develop trust and, you know, find places to remove those biased human filters that Yosef is talking about. And you know, I mean, even to the point where, I mean, it's so early, but I imagine a day when, you know, the community has helped to grow this artificial intelligence that can, in an unbiased way, pick through that data and also maybe democratize access to those satellites. But I personally can't speak on the mechanisms that make that possible. But
this is the whole, I mean, this is the whole concept of oracles, where I feel that we are all building this this obviously super organism. Yeah, we all contribute our mental power that eventually becomes essentially a neuron in this in this distributed brain. Okay. However, because this is what we do, this is what I do in my everyday work. I receive 100 emails and I send 10. This is what a neuron does in the brain. This is what most of our, at least in IT sector, this is what we do. We become a single neuron in this distributed brain. However, in my view, this distributed brain today lacks sensory inputs. There's no, it's kind of brewing within itself, and it's disconnected from the environment. I mean, the normal organism has a brain, but it has also fingers, it has eyes, it has a tongue, and so it receives some inputs, and then based on these inputs, it does certain things, and then it may fall, and then he understands that he made a mistake, and then he learns how to manipulate its arms and legs, and walk, and do, and eat, and do all of these things. And I feel that this distributed brain that we are building today lacks some of the sensory inputs and also the feedback loop where we can effectively learn from our mistakes and become this baby that can eventually walk and talk and do all of these things. And in my work, I feel that the satellites that we are launching, this is what will eventually become the sensory input, the eyes basically of this enormous superorganism. This is how I see it. And obviously, it's a normal process. It's a process of evolution. It will take time for all of these parts to connect. However, this is a very slow process, and I think it's worth understanding how all these things work and what is lacking, where the challenges are, before we can effectively start moving into this direction. And hopefully, we don't break our neck in the process, because it's going slow, and there are a lot of challenges and dangers.
Well, if I may hijack your analogy just for 1 second, you know, in chrysalis, an organism has no sensory input when a caterpillar goes to a butterfly. So maybe we're just still evolving. And
absolutely, we are still evolving. There's absolutely no doubt. We are definitely, we are always evolving, and we will continue to evolve for as long as we exist. So certainly, I don't have any demands that we right now and there we need to reach. But I'm just it helps me, this analogy helps me to understand what is happening, and also helps perhaps direct some of my work and yeah, this analogy is helpful to me.
Steve, you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I just, I don't know. It might just be piling on or preaching to the choir. I just, I wanted to kind of jump on to what the previous gentleman was saying and what you were saying, Melanie, in the sense that, you know, there are all these things running in parallel. And, you know, for instance, in Catalyst last funding round, there's a group of scientists in Argentina that got funded happily. I had the chance to talk to these guys. The name of the proposal was the No Ether Protocol. And so they basically were wanting to tokenize the same kind of thing that's going on with the SETI research, and that there are scientific problems that they're involved in that just need CPU processing power. So they wanted to incentivize people to give their unused processing power to processing scientific problems that just need number crunching. And it's a beautiful thing, you know, what they've done there. And I, you know, continuing on along with that thought of the parallel threads going on, you know, what's happening in Gimbal Labs and working on tokenomics, as well as just broader educational stuff like Megan and Manfo do. You know, I feel like what we're doing is creating a new body, you know, and what's happening right now is the construction of the skeleton. And, you know, as different things grow, it's kind of like, you know, tissue forming organs, and, you know, and then that network of communication between things. And I think we have a lot to look forward to, and we're going to have moments of exponential growth as things get connected. But that's what's exciting to me about information being decentralized. I don't know how we get decentralized satellite ownership going. You know, like that's such big money, but you know, we can already see within the Cardano community how quickly money can be generated, you know, through these positive feedback systems. And I just want to say I appreciate all that everybody here is doing, and you know, look forward to what happens in the next 5 years, you know, because I think in 5 years it's going to be radically different than the way it is right now. And this should only go on, you know, regardless of wars or central bank meddling in our lives. You know, we can do this.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for piping in about Gimbal Labs. You know, Yosef, there's so many things going on. I just, you know, wish I could download what's happening in my brain with all the connections. So we'll figure it out. Yeah.
I'm sure, but actually the very interesting point from my previous, I have a PhD in information theory and I worked on distributed networks in the past, and completely distributed networks, they're actually extremely inefficient because you need some level of coordination, and so you need the best networks are actually heterogeneous networks that have combined distributed sections and centralized nodes that coordinate. And this is how human body and any organism works as well. So for instance, in the human brain, memories are completely distributed, but then there is a one mouth to eat, and there are certain very concentrated things. So not even in a best distributed network, certain things will need to be centralized. And so I don't think in this case of satellites, for instance, I don't think everything needs to be decentralized and honored in a distributed, decentralized ways. The government, as it is today, can run satellites, make the satellite data public, which is already the case today. And then a lot of decentralized organizations can ingest this data and benefit from it. So in this sense, I think we are on track. It just we need to learn. It's all about connecting things. It's all about this.
It's the heart
connecting to the other parts. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's the heart of the matter. Our purpose, our goal, our reason for being here. When you showed that diagram with the interlapping, there's the heart in the middle. Whether it's a node, the physical heart that we have, it's what pumps, you know, and it keeps the rest of us going. So how we figure it out and how we copy nature in some sort of way in that wisdom, you know, this is the beginning. This is a very cool place to be in time. It's what I said at the beginning, we're in the right environment to plant the seed, and what it becomes, we don't really know. We know that it's a seed and it's showing some sort of form of life, and it will become something else for future generations. Yeah, I don't know. And I really appreciate that you're here, you know, in with us and connecting with us. I've already sent out a message to get some other people connected to you in these areas of concern. So
thank you.
Thank you. Tyler, sorry, I'm going to just take over. Aman, you go ahead. And then I think we're going to start doing breakout rooms. Looks like 6 or 7 of them.
Hello everyone. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
I had a question about especially like in Cardano community, in all over Cardano community, if we see, there is much more much more concentrated efforts into reducing the climate effect that is going on, climate pollution and everything, which is not we are able to see in Solana or Ethereum kind of projects. Like there is a project called as KlimaDAO, so which is based on carbon credit system. People can actually trade carbon credits. That is the only come close to like this kind of conference system that is happening in Cardano community. And so I had a question like, are funding for the all of the projects that are in the conference happening from the project catalyst by people voting on it, or is it through that we can directly launch a project and go for like deforestation or rebuilding the forest economy?
So I think I did drop some links to our Telegram and Discord channel. Join us there, and these kind of questions can be answered, and we can help guide you through Project Catalyst. It's a whole other series, and you know, right now we'll stay focused on moving through the event. But yeah, the links are there. If you need them again, we'll drop them in again. Tyler, back to you.
Sure. Well, one thing that I would like to talk about is something that Koen brought up earlier, and just thinking about regenerating at scale. You know, how with all the tools we have and the tools that we're going to have in the coming years, including satellite data that is condensed and unbiased and available to everybody for whatever they need. How can we use these kinds of tools to, for instance, what Hobbs said, get the megahertz back onto the landscape? You know, do away with the need for physical fences, and not to create this sort of a system that relies on technology, but that utilizes technology to help get natural rhythms back into the way that we are growing food and managing the landscape. And we might think, I feel like these kind of discussions are so complex that sometimes it helps to have like a picture of something on the ground. Maybe we pick a specific location and just imagine. Otherwise, we have satellites flying all over the whole Earth. And maybe we think about particular leverage points, because you know, like Yosef is saying, like it is inefficient to have all the information on a blockchain, and similarly, it's inefficient to just try to come up with ideas that are going to be blanket solutions everywhere on Earth. But if we focus on critical areas, critical forests, critical ecosystems that have an impact on the wider, hydrology and all these other systems, maybe that's a place to start. And maybe that's too much information, but I don't know. Somebody take it away, please.
I mean, I can only agree with everything you said. In my view, all the solutions are so complex that the only things that work are very specific. And this is what always makes scaling so very hard. But this is the only way. Regeneration doesn't happen at scale. And so this is unfortunately the only way. And this is what also makes it difficult. I mean, I guess venture capital is changing a little bit, I guess, I hope. But in reality, this whole model of rapid growth, this hockey sticks, all of this, it doesn't apply to regeneration. It just doesn't work together, unfortunately. And so everything real, everything that really works in regeneration is always local and very specific and doesn't grow fast. And maybe this is what the blockchain and all of this enormous amount of capital that is concentrated in this new financial vehicles, maybe this is a solution, because the previous model, the venture capital model, just didn't work for regenerative projects.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, through the lens of tearing down fences, we live in such an interconnected world with roads and farms and everything. We'll never be able to bring back megahertz in over most of the planet. What we have to do is take their activity as a fractal and shrink it down. And then if you deploy that fractal in enough places on a small local scale, then that's really the only way that we're going to move forward, because we'll never have herds of a million bison again. Maybe not, maybe I don't know, maybe 10,000 years we might be able to pull that off. But right now, what we have to do is do the best sort of facsimile of that as we can, scale down. And, as Yosef so rightly pointed out, you're bounded in how much you can scale by your property line and the amount of animals that you can run or the amount of crops you can grow. So scale is always slow and linear in regenerative agriculture. And if you want to scale exponentially, you have to either consult or sell merchandise or do something like that. So there are inherent limitations for sure. And it's just how can we mimic what Mother Nature is doing, small and at scale. And part of the problem is, how are you going to get these guys who have 40, 50,000 acre ranches, who are funded because they're cell phone billionaires, to have any real desire to do that? I mean, that's a whole nother bag of worms. But my overall point is just, it's got to be done in smaller fractals of what Mother Nature had going on thousands of years ago.
At least to start, then maybe from there will be ways to connect these dots and connect these fractals into bigger structures. But it always needs to start with a niche solution. Again, unfortunately, and I think even an attempt to start with a mega project is counterproductive in my view. Of course, I'm not an expert in this particular area.
Koen, I invite you to jump in.
And scale is always a tricky thing. I think you're absolutely right. It has to work on a small scale first before it can scale up. I think we do need scale of impact, or we need the impact scale to have a dent in climate, to have a dent in water, etc. But I also agree, we have limited resources, even within very successful blockchain communities. And so it's also about figuring out where to to intervene first, and what are the critical first steps, and then iterate from there and learn from there and see what emerges and see. Heard somebody say lately what the landscape wants to grow. I think that's what the first question, what can grow and what we can learn from technology of what can grow in the next 20 years there, et cetera, et cetera. But it is observing, and it's probably very different from what we expect because it is very complex. I mean, we have a lot of interesting stories on nature that we imagined certain birds were forest birds and they turned out actually to be open savanna birds, but we pushed them into the forest and they were sort of hanging in there. And there's endless amount of these stories that we really don't know a lot. And I think it's very risky to make large scale things or large scale bets because the chances of Europe being wrong is very, very, very high. And it has to work at small scale and then grow. But at the same time, we're running out of soil and time and water and carbon. So there's a constant tension between that. And yes, I don't think there's, let's say, venture capital returns in soil regeneration, but there might be biodiversity returns. I mean, I've seen examples of very fast regeneration in all different aspects, but maybe not necessarily the cash return coming out. But is that something we want or need to have a 3x or 10x or whatever in a couple of years? So the question of scale and feeding the world is always a fascinating one, not for this discussion. But I would say, I mean, yeah, what's the smallest fractal that you can make work and then repeat? And probably it has to change slightly because the land, the soil, the square meter is slightly different, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not how we normally operate. We normally operate in agriculture, at least. This is how we grow grain. These are the inputs. This is the recipe. And now just do it on 100,000 hectares or acres. That's very, very tricky. I mean, we've seen the issues with that, obviously, and now we have to unlearn that. With all the tech, we can help, et cetera, but they don't give us answers. They give us clues. I know one of the farmers that bought one of the first drones, 15,000 euros, and got an enormous amount of data on his farm. And then what? Like, what do you do with that? How does it lead to differences tomorrow on your tractor or when you're planting, et cetera? And it's probably about complexity, and we're not very used to that. Like, how do we have a lot of discussions on the podcast now. How do you enable farmers? And I think that in terms of tools is very interesting. How do you enable farmers to hold more complexity on their land? And we always have the tendency to go to simplify, but what are tools that we can actually help farmers to hold that complexity, to stack businesses, but also complexity in the soil, on top of the soil, etc. And you often get to perennial systems, you get to much more complex things. And yeah, it's going to be messy. That's so I would, anybody that says we're going to do 20,000 hectares tomorrow in one shot, or any of those big zero numbers, I would be very, very cautious, because it sort of runs against what we've seen that works.
Well, to make an optimistic case for scaling, sometimes I've heard that we overestimate what we can accomplish on short time frames, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years. And there's a lot of forces that are kind of pushing us to do something about it. I mean, you know, you can print all the money you want. Fertilizer, the cost of fertilizer in a globe with, you know, harder to extract fossil fuels is going to outpace what the money supply to pay for that kind of a thing. And then before too long, we have dead fields that are dependent on fertilizer and nothing there to you know, start the process of regeneration. And we also have this huge transition of farmland from, you know, older farm owners to younger generations, or selling it off, or selling it to big agribusiness. And simultaneously, we have, I feel like all over the world, just so many young people that are kind of without hope, without work, that could find a place. Not that everybody's going to be a farmer, but a percentage could be a farmer. And when we get human hands in the soil at scale, not just messing around, but working like out of knowledge and wisdom for how to work with the land, then we are able to scale these things much quicker, and also with the help of animals and all these tools that we have at our disposal. So I don't know, I just feel like I like to think on kind of like the 5 to 10 year time frame, just to get these systems up and going. And you know, the tricky thing about perennial systems is that it's a lot of the work is up front, you know, building those fences, growing those herds, just working with shitty soil and slowly making it better that can handle more cattle, all these things. So yeah, I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but
Can I jump in?
please. Thank you, Ab.
Yeah. To add your when people say, well, how am I supposed to do this over 40,000 acres? And I typically respond with, you should have started 25 years ago, because there's a really great example of a guy named Alejandro Carrillo in the Chihuahua Desert, and he has split his 30,000 acres into basically 200 permanent paddocks, and not full on five wire barbed wire, just one line of high tensile electric fence that you train the cattle to. And so he split 30,000 acres into 200 permanent paddocks. And if you use a poly wire reel to split those further, you can get 300. And he's increased his stocking rate by 5 times. And a lot of the other ranches around are doing what he's doing. And they have noticed an increase in rainfall by 1 to 2 inches in the Chihuahua Desert in that period, because the soil is holding more water and there's more forage as well. So it can be done. It has to be planned properly, and it has to be looked at over the large scale time frame. But still, 30,000 acres is not that much when it comes to looking at how if you compare it to the great African migration that happens every year, 30,000 acres, that's just a drop in the bucket. That's 1 day's worth of grazing for that migration. So even 30,000 acres is a small fractal, but it can be done, and it should be done. And if you can increase your, one of the things I talk about is, like, I sell beef, but I don't think about beef at all. I don't think about it at all. It's not even a byproduct for me. It's a waste product. And so that allows my mind to focus completely on it as an ecological input, an ecological necessity. I worry about the life of the cow, not the death of the cow. And when I do that, and if we were all to do that, we would find that we would have more protein than we really know what to do with. Because if some guy in the desert can increase his stocking rate 5 times and make it rain more, imagine what we could all do on our land that we currently have.
But what is the limiting factor in how much protein can you get? What is there's always normally in the systems, there's some limiting factor. What is the limiting factor in your case?
The amount of forage you can grow. That's obviously the thing, but the amount of, well, 2 things: the amount of forage you can grow and the efficiency with which you are able to harvest that forage. Most grazing systems are selective, and they're only harvesting 50% of the forage. And if you think of an ancestral bison herd, by the time 1 million animals washed across that, there'd be nothing left. 100% of the forage will have been harvested. And in current grazing paradigms, it gets 40, 50%. I get to about 90, 95%. And when I do that, it increases my stocking rate. And doing that improves the health of my soil, which means that my root structures will be deeper. I'll grow more grass. And eventually you reach climax ecosystem for what you can grow in your particular area. So there is a limiting factor of the amount of forage and how much of it you can harvest, but we are using that extremely inefficiently. And one of the reasons we're using it inefficiently is we're using cattle that have been bred to do well on fossil fuel inputs.
Sure.
We have a couple of hands raised, but maybe we'll jump into those. Juan, do you have a question?
Thank you, Tyler. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I just want to make a comment. I've been very involved with sustainability with my county extension board, and for a few years back, and also very involved with horticulture, with a landscape company for a few years, more than about 20 years. So I live firsthand the sustainability needs, and the fact that we are doing a lot of work locally, but then we raise our head and see that not everybody's doing it. So we find, let's say I live in a county that is mostly urban, and there is not extensive amount of land to plant. So the focus has been to develop urban farmers, like in your house, to have a herb garden and to have a system, hydroponic system to rise your nutrients and your plants. And that's been very successful. But again, beginning back on what you guys have been talking about the fact that things start small, it needs to scale up, to start small and scale up. I think that's the only way to do it, and that's the way technology is going to help us. One of the challenges I see every day is the difficulty to communicate, as far as being able to have everybody in the same page. So different entities, different government entities, and the community associations, and everybody's doing their own thing. And if we find a way through technology, blockchain, Cardano blockchain, to unify the vision of sustainability, we achieve a lot. And I'm very supportive of that. And I just want to say that I really like what I've been listening today. I believe it's the first time I'm involved with this type of this part of the ecosystem. And Melanie, forgive me, I was supposed to be very much involved, but because of many things going on, I haven't been able to. But yes, I think technology is going to help us a lot in this, and I'm very, very pleased with what Megan and Genty are doing in Cameroon with that farm. There is a project in Puerto Rico and in Costa Rica that is doing exactly the same thing. It would be awesome if you guys connect each other to do, to interact. One of the things that they are doing is education. They educate the small population around them in blockchain. I believe they are putting together classes in the farm to educate the guys that work for them, and also the community at large, about blockchain technology and how that can impact their lives.
Awesome. Juan, I'm going to jump in. Thank you for sharing. And any folks like that, I mean, yeah, we're all over the world, but bring them here. We do a lot of these things. We have weekly meetings. We can get them into dialogue with the folks in WADA that are doing similar work on the ground. We got another question, hand up from Bruno. Bruno, what's up?
Hey, yeah, I'm chiming in from probably a previous comment, and I know we're kind of like going everywhere with these like conversations, but obviously it's great. I just wanted to kind of talk around, so like kind of the fit between blockchain and how we will be able to scale, I think, is kind of important. So I feel like distributing the workload and the kind of getting the information from multiple sources is important. So I think it's good that going with the blockchain, I think that's kind of like a perfect fit, because regenerative agriculture and permaculture, all of these terms, this is things that are done across the world, and we kind of need to consolidate the information and make sure that we're not trying the same things that maybe someone has worked out that in this climate doesn't work, and we can kind of consult a community of people who kind of got everything on the blockchain. And the blockchain, I feel like, supports a lot of these regenerative agriculture and stuff, because it's such a it's something that's recorded in terms of it's been used for generations, but at the same time it's not it's not consolidated, that information. There's no way you can kind of go for your general purpose information on how I'm going to regenerate this area, or how I'm going to build a sustainable farm or regenerative farm. So it's we need a place where people can consult around different topics, because it is something that's not, it's not necessarily going to be the same for everyone. So people who are in a tropical climate will need kind of a group that's focused on how the, regeneration will work there, and how hydrology is, going to work there, as opposed to, a more temperate climate, or, a desert climate, and how you would, work with those conditions, and what animals, species that you need to kind of integrate with your farm. So I feel like, there's a lot of different niches and focuses and information that people need to get. So people might be doing something that they don't know is actually damaging, and people need to get that information. So I feel like having a space for that, and also having a space to kind of record everything that's being done, have that on the blockchain, immutable, and you can kind of understand, okay, this is the life cycle of something, and didn't go well here or weren't well here, and you can kind of gauge all of that information quite well from a blockchain. And, you know, having like that open source information is kind of perfect for this. You know, people need to be able to view what other people are doing. So I feel like that's perfect. And also like with problems around pay and stuff, I feel like that's quite important as well. There's a lot of like migrants who work in the agriculture sector, and that's quite a big issue. So if we can have a project that is, you know, doing regenerative agriculture, hiring people who are already in that sector, but, you know, getting like, you know, underpaid and stuff. And you can kind of show on the blockchain that you're paying people correctly and you're valuing people's time, you know, in a nice way, and kind of even using DIDs as a way to improve that, because there might be a lot of illegal immigrants working in that sector. At least here in Portugal, that's an issue. Potentially in America and other places, it's, you know, a similar problem. So yeah, I feel like it's so many overlapping solutions that can work together, and we kind of need to consolidate the information, kind of get our ideas together, and yeah, have a forum for that, so we can kind of bring new people in and introduce them and connect them with the right people, kind of like we already do with Cardano4Climate, but more focused on, yeah, farmers and people who are wanting to contribute to this. I feel like that's the way we need to go, rather than maybe aiming for a large scale project or anything like that. I feel like, yeah, it makes more sense to support the local farmers that are trying to get into this, and individuals who are in this space, because I feel like there's so many people who do like permaculture courses and all of this stuff, and they don't know what to do. We need to guide them, give them a place to contribute their energy and reward them. But yeah, I'll shoot over to Yoram, I think. He has a question.
Yeah, no, Bruno, I want to embrace actually what you said, and also add to that. I mean, completely agree. And I think a lot of things are happening, and there are some things that scaled actually in the field, right? Certification scaled, right? I mean, it's we all know it doesn't work, but it's scaled, right? So there is I mean, it's scaled with billions of dollars. It's scaled in terms of the consumer, right? The consumer is looking for solutions, and consumer is buying the certification, right? So, and tens of billions of dollars invested there every year. So it's a question of trust. I mean, what you started actually, Yosef, how we create this trust, how we create this traceability of information, right? And transparency of information. And I think there is real really to scale the things. And this is what brought me actually to to blockchain and Cardano, as some of you know, is really to look for the solution of trust and traceability, because they will scale. Right, so we speak about hundreds of billions of dollars in COP26. Where the money is going, what's the impact that is happening? Right, so if we can actually create this traceability and transparency, I think we can reduce the misuse of money, which this is probably the key challenge today. And this is why I think we are here. And it starts with small projects. Yes, it starts with small verification project of tree planting using Veritree or using Yosef technology, satellite technology, forest conservation, and stuff like that. And then it's kind of and specific projects on the ground with regenerative agriculture that can scale. So it starts with these projects. But I think this is the opportunity we have, in my view. And this is what so excites me about the blockchain and Cardano specifically.
But I want to again repeat, and I'm a bit repetitive, but there is this subtle but crucial difference between trust and truth. There are lots of people that trust, and blockchain, indeed, it's all about trust. So you can build a system where you can establish something as a consensus, and then everybody may decide to trust in it. But it has little to do with truth. I mean, going back to my initial presentation, right now, majority of the population of Russia believe Putin. They have the trust for the government and for their leader. And a few decades ago, the majority of the German population had their full trust to the dear Führer. And so people trust each other, but it doesn't mean that it's the truth. And this is the very subtle and very difficult. How do you connect it to things that are actually actual reality and actually can be established as truth? And this is what that is, I find, very big challenge, a completely open challenge. There are obviously a lot of people that are thinking about this challenge. And I think having the sources of information where you can trace all the way from the evidence, from the factual evidence to the conclusion. This chains of evidence, this is what is lacking in all of this ecosystem. And definitely, I mean, this is why satellites were developed in the first place. This is exactly the intent. This is the purpose. But I think there's still a long way before they fulfill this this role.
Yosef, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's like a very good point. Like, it's a challenge that needs to be addressed. I'm with Empower, and I spoke to Simon from Wire. He's also having this same kind of challenges as us, and I guess it's going to be the same problem with like what we're doing here, because this is essentially real fi. So how are we connecting, you know, the blockchain stuff to stuff that's happening in real life, and how can we confirm that, you know, because it says on the blockchain, does that actually mean that something's there, or is it just the blockchain saying, like, you know, it's a metaverse tree, you know? But no, we need to make sure, like, how can we have like an off-chain oracle, an oracle that confirms that something is, you know, really there, kind of like how an oracle works for like checking databases for price, but maybe something that's more localized and is actually like, you know, providing some sort of reward for people on the ground. And it's something that, I don't know, we're kind of exploring, and maybe you guys would be interested, people in here who are into that, you know, how we can create a system around incentivizing, you know, local people, because it's not going to be worth anyone coming, you know, traveling thousands of miles or, you know, whatever to go and make sure something is actually planted or something is actually built or whatever it may be in that scenario. But we need to have local people who can be there and, you know, take a picture or, you know, walk by and just confirm something is done in a certain way, like, you know, then they can get a bonus for that and, you know, rank up to make sure, you know, maybe verifying other people. So kind of like a catalyst type system where it's like, you know, community advocates essentially who can contribute and get rewarded for that contribution essentially. And yeah, kind of a structure around that needs to be defined, obviously, and it's not clear right now how that will work. But the blockchain is the perfect model for it, because it needs a distributed, you know, it needs a distributed consensus essentially. And this is going to need a distributed like consensus essentially of people who are willing to, you know, contribute to this. And obviously it's interesting to think about. I don't know if anyone's interested in that, but feel free to give me a shout if you are.
So I'm just creating some breakout rooms for anybody that wants to stay. I'm going to create one on trust, one on regenerative agriculture. Give me some other ideas. What kind of rooms do we want to carry on in this conversation? And maybe what we'll do is leave, actually trust we can carry on in the main room. Just stay here, but let's pick some other topics to carry on in case.
I would vote for not having one called regenerative agriculture.
Okay, what do you want it?
I'll be in the Ethiopia room. I don't know. Let's, what conversations do we want to have?
I'm going to put Ethiopia. I'm going to keep regenerative agriculture. Tyler, just leave it open. I've got 4 room to carry on the conversation we're doing right now. Let's do collaborations and anybody else. Last chance, going once, twice. It's an open room.
Well, but
okay, so
I feel like we should, we didn't hear too much from the Planetary Care team. So I wanted to make sure that either they can share something right now. I mean, they're doing so much work in this area.
Yeah, so
and if not, maybe
let me suggest,
I would encourage them and anybody else to have their own breakout room.
Yeah, so they can go into collaborations, pick the rooms, follow the people you want to ask questions from, and then we can carry this on. I'm just observing that we've gone 2¼ hours, and thank you so much everybody that has stayed. And to honor other people that may want to have more smaller conversations, we're going to just do this. And feel free to use them or not. Stay or go, they're there, okay?
Thank you.
Very good. I wanted to jump in on this conversation that Yosef, you're talking about here about truth, and to me that like facts themselves are kind of useless in a vacuum. And the question is really like, what are we doing with these facts? And in order to decide that, like, we need what you might refer to as like a moral imperative or an animating principle through which to filter and towards which to apply those. And I think that's where the problem kind of comes in, because then you get this charismatic leader who comes in and says, this is the animating principle that we're going to work towards, and we're going to apply all of these facts that are objectively true towards this animating principle. So, you know, I guess my question is, how do you see the facts, the objective facts themselves existing in a vacuum, as how do they relate to the animating principle through which we should apply them?
So it's a wonderful topic, and I don't know if it's a question, but it's a wonderful topic, and I think it's very deep. It goes very deep, and I think information itself, by its nature, it's always differential. It's never disconnected, and it's never in a vacuum. Information is always, you know already something, and you have certain worldview, and then by adding certain data, you make a differential step to acquiring more information. There's the information doesn't exist on its own. There's always a differential from a priori information, from what you already knew. And then this next step is knowledge. What, at least in my definition, it's always in the context of a certain objective. Like you have certain information, and in the context of certain objective to achieve something, it becomes knowledge, right? And don't know whether it makes sense, because again,
right, and then
differential. There's a lot to discuss here to establish a common, you know, a priori common base.
Sure. Yeah. From the ground, like I understand. And the question is, you know, how, I guess the real trick is, how do you prevent the person or people who are deciding the objective, from, you know, using that to create death, destruction, and.
So here is I spend a lot of time thinking about. So if we have time, and stop me if when you are bored. But I have it all in my head, and I don't know whether I will be able to really describe it properly. First of all, there's an objective problem here, right? And if we come from with a different a priori information, the same data can lead us to a strikingly different conclusions, right? So if we don't have some common base, this is the whole problem of politics, and especially politics right now. This is the whole problem. If I project it to the political landscape, I don't know, of United States, where you have this completely separate groups of people that already have an established kind of base of established worldviews that are completely exclusive from each other, then the same fact and the same data leads them to opposed conclusions, right? However, how you build this, how you separate these groups, and how you separate this, build these different worldviews, is by actually gradually feed people biased information. So if you have, I mean, as a child, the children start from like white piece of paper, right? And if you continue to gradually feed two different people, add slightly different information, slightly biased information, they develop different worldviews. And once they've done this, then it's almost impossible to merge them together, because any data that you feed them will lead them to in a different direction, to different conclusions, right? I'm not sure whether it makes a lot of sense, but so what you need to do is you need to make sure that the data that you give people is always as unbiased as you can. You need to gradually give people reliable, factual information, and then over time, you build a worldview that is unbiased. Does it make sense? Give me some feedback here, because I'm unloading a lot of
Right. Yeah. I mean that certainly makes sense. I think there are definitely some problems with regard to,
like yeah.
I'm just trying to think, like, how do you feed children data? Like so much of the way that children learn is through emotion and through play. And so, and also the question that I may have there is there some value in the tension between those worldviews helping to precipitate out something that might be might approximate truth, or is truth in your case simply data driven?
Sorry, just to add, maybe it's just in my perspective about more than just data, but allowing for multiple views. At least that's how I see it in terms of as a collaboration thing. You want to have at least openness and have like this kind of open-mindedness to new views and to other perspectives, so that you can kind of achieve a more, I mean, you're achieving consensus through being able to understand that maybe someone else's view is better than yours because they had a different experience and they might, you know, be able to view something in a different way. And your view is, you know, on your, like, based on what you know and what you've like thought in the past is great. But then you hear this other opinion and you're open to like, okay, this has some good like points. And
garden and do composting. So I think that it's a very interesting field of study, and I think that it's a very good use case too for being able to educate individuals in local areas as to what works for the soil conditions locally. And I think that's a potential use case for NFTs in different regions. I think that's very cool.
Doobie's right in between you and I in Alberta. So, and with NFT seed. So, you know, the connections are absolutely amazing. Tyler, I'm sorry I took over. Take a moment to have a bite. You know, you said low blood sugar a little while ago. Please take care of yourself. And the rest of you, Tyler has taken over this event this time, never done this before. And I had the opportunity today to step back and enjoy myself. So this to me is huge, Tyler, and thank you very much for doing this. Still eat, because Tagain is going to take over and fill in the gap. So just take care of you, okay? And I'm gonna go make the rest of my tea.
All right. I'll just say that I was saying the entire thing that we have discussed about the technology, the principles of regeneration, and the challenges. The project in Ethiopia, I'm sorry, I have a little cough and a little difficulty to talk, so bear with me. So the projects we are thinking about is about implementing those principles in a country somehow historically and culturally and politically, somehow it's really the perfect, I believe that the perfect place to implement those principles. There are certain conditions in Ethiopia that makes the entry barrier so low for this kind of projects that that's what we want to really introduce to all of you to participate. As you see on my on the file that I shared, that this is really the thing that we are trying to change. This is on the highlands of Ethiopia. It's highly densely populated area for hundreds of kilometers. There are really very few villages. There are cities, but people live like this for hundreds of kilometers. They're not really living together that much, which makes it very, very difficult to provide services such as schools and health facilities, electricity, clean water, telephone. And the land, this is highland. So most of Ethiopia is, at least I think probably 50% of Ethiopia is highland. And that is the highland area, which is densely populated and degraded, highly degraded. This is probably from the same area that the degradation of the land. What we are proposing is there are also from the highlands also in opposite, there are also lowlands in Ethiopia where that are not populated at all. They are warm valleys where there is water, but they are not populated because they are warm and they are kind of inhospitable to live. So people live in the highlands and yeah, they overuse the land up there and they removed all the forest. So what we are proposing is to take land, a small piece of land on lowlands near the rivers in the valley, and build beautiful livable villages where people would want to move into from the highlands so that we can reforest the highlands. This is not going to be a very short time project, but the situation in Ethiopia allows us to do that because of the land ownership issue and the decentralized type of governance in Ethiopia, that we can deal with districts, with regions, with the government, and the political situation that makes it really very difficult not to change at the moment. So that's what we are trying to achieve. And this is not going to be done by few people. It's going to need expertise of almost anyone who wants to be involved. We need economists, we need probably investors, we are going to need blockchain experts, game theory experts, almost everyone, how to achieve this. This is the problem that we're going to solve, and that's what we are going to discuss today. And we have been discussing with some people, local people in Ethiopia. We have been discussing to administrators and representatives of the local population. And we have got a very positive answer from them, a reply. And we have been discussing also with one of the most celebrated African permacultural teachers, that he was my teacher. He's from Zimbabwe, and he travels all over Africa to teach permaculture and sustainable agriculture. And we have, I think Taylor has his video to probably can show us. And from that, I think we can take up the discussion and go from there. Thank you.
Hey, I'm sorry, I just need 1 minute. I just want to post something.
Okay, good time for anybody else to just pop in and say something. Let's fill the gap and let Tyler do his stuff.
Where exactly are you in the stages of reclaiming or just of this project as a whole? Like, do you have land that you acquired in the lowlands of Ethiopia, and also whereabouts in the highland of Ethiopia is this project located?
The project is located in southern Ethiopia, in a district called Yem. But we have also, after we have discussed this thing, and we have also another district that we have promised land. Land in Ethiopia is owned kind of, there is no private ownership of land. It's the government, which supposed to be the society, owns the land. So that makes it really very easy to acquire land if we convince the authorities that what we are doing is going to benefit the society. And we go through the legal process. So we are promised that we have identified the land we want to work on. It is unoccupied, and basically they have said that there is no problem. If you really want to work on this land, then you can have that land, as long as the legal conditions and our project is acceptable to the community.
Yeah, I have I have Tichafa's video lined up, and I just to give you a little bit of background. So Tichafa was Tagane's, who is just speaking, T Tefera. He was your permaculture design teacher, right? Many years ago, and I had a talk with him yesterday. He's been teaching permaculture design for 28 years in, I think, over 18 countries in East Africa, including Ethiopia. He's in Zimbabwe right now. And so I will, I don't want to play the whole video because he kind of gets into his experience. And I jump in just to keep it a little bit shorter, just jump into where he is beginning to talk about landscape design in the Ethiopian highlands. So I'm gonna screen share real quick, and that's my baby.
You can also drop, you can also drop the link to the full version in the chat too.
I have it all queued up here. Let me try. Just let me know if it's weird. Can I go on mute and play video at the same time? Probably, right?
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
But you can also drop the full length link in the chat in case somebody wants to hear the whole story.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah.
All
Thanks.
right. Yeah. Whoop. Screen share. Screen share. Is that it? Is that queued up? Nope. Where was it? Sorry.
I'm not hearing
I'm
any
sorry,
volume.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about this.
Tyler, no worries. We're all learning how to use this and navigate this new system.
I had it all lined up here. I think it was around 7:30 or 7:20. And I'm going to crank the volume seems cranked. I'm going to turn it all the way up on my computer. Let me know what you think of the audio.
Okay, still no volume on my side. Anybody else? Any suggestions?
Well,
Francois, have you got any ideas on what might be going amiss?
I'm not the one to ask about this.
Well, I'm asking Francois.
Okay.
Yes. So if you're in the screen share window, at the very bottom left, there's a little button that says sound, include sound or something, or video. I can't remember what it says exactly, but there is a button there which allows the video to be played directly, the sound of the video to be played directly, so it doesn't go through your speaker system.
Oh, I knew you were here for a reason.
No, that's what I came for.
more than one. Thank you for being here, Francois.
So I'm seeing something that says share sound. I guess you can see me. If I click on that, is that the thing I should be clicking on?
No, we don't see that part of it yet. You you may have to stop screen share.
Yeah, you have to come out of the screen share first.
Gotcha.
And then you go into the screen share again, and then you look in the window somewhere at the bottom right or bottom left. Sorry, there's a little box
which says share sound.
Yeah, now we all learn this. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, let's try this again. Back it up.
What we want to also look at is.
You can hear that? And I'm going to go on mute.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I just don't want you to hear the baby.
Okay. All right.
We'll try it. Okay.
This landscape, what are the opportunities? The landscape with lots of slopes, the hilly landscape, it's a big advantage. There is already a slope
we must control the slope. The first thing we want to control is the running water. Once we control the running water, we have contained our soils, we have contained our water, we have actually sent all the water down, so that down the lower land, we're actually creating springs. There are situations here where you find there's a highland there, like one part of Ethiopia where we have Abaminch. Then up there is Dorze. Abaminch is just 1,100 meters above sea level. You go up to Dorze, you are 2,800 meters above sea level. So much rain up there. Abaminch down there receives this water that has gone down up there in Dorze. And Abaminch actually means 40 springs. So many springs, there are more than 100 there. So we can actually have these terraces building springs at the lower level of the land. So when we have this kind of terrain, we are really to learn from the Konso people, from other people. We also use the A-frame to really make a lot of swells, contain more water, have more growth now. All the silt soil now captured, and things happen that way. So when you arrive in the area, the WADA, the local people, everybody's involved. Everybody will put their input and we make notes out of that. That's how it will work. But the scoping period is on its own, because we don't want to jump into a project before we get in really contact with people. We want to really discuss with people. We want to integrate them into what we want to do. And we want to get an understanding of each other. They should not look at us as taking over. They should look at us as adding more knowledge to the knowledge that they have. So in all communities, people have got so much knowledge. It is from this knowledge that we move forward. If we are permaculturists, we are saying the old information, the traditional information, the already known information, there are gaps that we want to feed in and then move forward. That way we can really have successful projects. Challenges, normally what are the challenges? The challenge is that people look at funding and they have a fund. Once that fund goes, the project is dead. That situation is created by the way funders bring money. They want the money to come in and they want it used for the 2 years and then they disappear from the scene. Now the approach I've normally used is we develop a permaculture project with individuals, model group. The model group must develop some ownership. We are saying, learn from this project, maybe as an employee. We want you to go home and do the same. We support you as you start to do it. We follow up on you. We make you exchange with other people who have done the same. And we are exchanging even seed, we are exchanging everything that they are also doing. Then we have these field days, we move around with them. We also find a way of sponsoring some competition, not really a cutthroat kind of thing where people are so cruel of each other. We are actually saying everybody's a winner here. It depends on how much you achieved. We are giving you this level of a prize. So the idea will be, let's annually have field days, exchange visits, and competitions. And this comes on year in, year out. At the moment, we are saying, at the same time, we are saying, what plants did we grow in the first year? Now they are producing. In areas where you can grow purpose, you can actually see this development. In 6 months, they are flowering. Other trees, your budded oranges are already giving flowers and fruit by the second year. And people now tend to integrate this into their life. They love these things. They are part of them. They are part of their lives. So the feeling that the donor will come back, we are moving it out slowly. We want to build them and then gradually move out. And it really works to gradually move out with competitions. And we are always redesigning what they've done so they can actually, like, they are starting afresh. They are starting afresh. So the project grows and grows and grows. We're actually saying, if we planted 100 trees last year, why don't we try 200 this year? Maybe the other year, let's monitor all our trees. Let's replace those that died. We have that plan like that. We move like that. That will work very well. I think this will be okay with the holistic approach that I've defined. I will be ready for any other questions, and if they are stated clearly, I will answer each of the questions as they come.
If I just jump in here, and unfortunately he was supposed to probably attend this conference today, but one of the challenges, the network is not available, so he can't come. And also the district that we are going to have, the leadership of the district that we are going to have the land, they tried to send videos to me yesterday and today, but they didn't succeed, exactly for the same reason. Very poor network. But I have talked to them on telephone, and they are really very happy. They are very excited to listen to what we are proposing. At least that's the first step that we are going to do.
We can see that there are some technological hurdles to overcome, major ones. If the leader of the district can't send a video. But just one of many interesting challenges involved with this project. And I think what we have going for it, I'm sorry I jumped in late, but you know, Ethiopia is a major focus for IOG and Cardano. And so I think any effort, any progress that we make on this kind of a project, I think we can get a lot of interest from the community as a whole to help move it forward. Because it's, I mean, we're talking about, you know, creating opportunity for 100,000 people and reforesting a landscape, getting the landscape back to producing food for subsistence farmers that are, you know, I mean, these folks they've just been in these areas for generations. I mean, going back hundreds of generations, right? So it may seem a little amorphous and up in the air at this point, and that's because it is just really, really super early. This is just a project that you know, Gain, he's been plugging away at Project Catalyst and trying to find solutions for Ethiopia for a while now, and he brought this idea to our group, and it just seems like a great opportunity to really think through a lot of these challenges. Tichafa mentioned that one of the challenges was you know, funding, and there's a history of exploitation when it comes to, like, hey, we're coming in here with some solutions, these are going to be great for you guys, and then they extract what they can and they leave. So clearly we're not going to be doing that, but there's also a level of trust that we have to build. But even before all of that, we're trying to think about what we're actually doing. So to help put it into focus a little bit, so I guess Fund 8 is just starting right now. Fund 9 then is a few months away. Fund 10 is maybe 6 months away. So I think whether it's, you know, Fund 9 or Fund 10, you know, as we're one thing that we can work towards is just putting a proposal together that's going to be the first steps for getting this project underway. And since it is a permaculture project, one of the things that's really critical early on is just gathering information, observing the landscape, noting what plants are there, what animals are there, where the rain is flowing, what areas, you know, have growth longer into the dry season, etc. All of these little things, and all of these, this is all like really important data that has value for this project, and hopefully we can find a way for it to have value to the community and potential investors. So there's going to be a fact-finding mission that Tichafa can help coordinate on the ground. But when it comes down to it, it's going to be the young people of Yem that are out there collecting this data as sort of like a decentralized permaculture project, observational blitz in a way, which is going to be pretty unique. But it seems like an opportunity because it's unique, and we're talking about, if we're talking about documenting wildlife, there's a first time that happens, which sounds very NFT-able to me, any of those kinds of things. So not that we can build in the value and collectability, but we have to earn that. And
Tyler, I'm going to just interrupt for 2 seconds. It's interesting that you were talking about observation, and we have a little chuckle going on here because it's hard to see Doobie's hand up right now. And this is a really good point if you think about it. Yeah, no other side, Doobie, actually on our screen has to come up the other way. See there, and it's exactly what observation is all about, right? There's things that pass through our lives that we don't look at and not to criticize, if we're focused on our own stuff. I do it myself, right? We miss these little signs throughout, and I'm very excited to do this. So I'm sorry for interrupting. I did want to draw attention to, and maybe that's why we need each other, because there's little observations in this program that we may not notice by ourselves.
Yeah, and Doobie, we're really happy to have you here. You presented at the tree conference that we had last month, or a couple months ago at this point, and shared that you had extensive permaculture design experience in Ethiopia. So just one of these lucky accidents that we find each other here. And so yeah, I don't know, what do we think? I'm going to drop the outline that we have into the chat.
So Tyler,
yeah.
Sorry, Tyler, Doobie does have a question, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but let's open space.
Yeah, I do. I wanted to know what the people really need in the immediate environment in Ethiopia. I'm more familiar with the Oromia region, and the projects I've worked within are in Harbachule, a small town, maybe 150 kilometers south of Addis, and have spent quite a bit of time looking at a lot of the different forests and growing some different plants all across the region. But at any rate, have become rather connected with a lot of the different peoples that are growing different plants or trying different things or trying different ways of rehabilitating the environment. And when we know what the people in the locality that you're really working with need, we can plug those things together probably really quickly. And as well as what do you foresee as being the first steps to building out something that people can align with, connect to, and then be a catalyst for change?
Oh, sorry, just to add to what Doobie just said, yeah, I think that, like was said in this video, I'm not exactly sure who this is from. That's the question I had as well for Tafira, because I came a little bit late, so this guy talking, but he had a lot of great things to say. And I think, yeah, one of the great, I don't know, tools I think we have is having some sort of challenge or competition where we can kind of have some sort of friendly way to encourage like collaboration within communities and get people to work on like a common goal. So whether that be like planting trees or, something around like the hydrology, which is probably the first step once we do like define like what's going to work well in this region, like whether that be swales or, well-placed ponds or dams or something like this. Like once we decide what is going to be the best, kind of like sharing that information with the locals, seeing their perspective, and obviously making sure that, they agree and they support this, and then kind of, encouraging them to follow these principles that we've kind of seen work well in this area, or, kind of deduced from observing and interacting with the people on the ground and, you know, the actual environment and seeing how the water flows in the region. Like, I think that's step one. So something like, I think the video that I'm pretty sure everyone here has seen from India, I think it's Andrew Millison video where he goes there and shows the project that they've done there around like, just water harvesting structures in different villages and competitions that they had there. And it's like every village that participated in the competition won because they had a better hydrology in their area. And yeah, I think if we have something like that encouraged with, I don't know how we implement blockchain into that, but I feel like it's better to have a good solution and try and work blockchain into it than, trying to, just work out a problem with blockchain. Yeah, I think it makes more sense for us to see how we can use blockchain as a tool for this real world solution.
I had a question, sir. Yes.
Go for it. Yeah, ask away.
Yes, sir. So basically, I was thinking, sir, like how blockchain tech, like especially Cardano system, can be implemented for gathering data, like making it transparent, like building regeneration of agriculture through forests and building up creating almost like a society from scratch. It is like, and food systems and everything have to be planned. So how do you think like Cardano ecosystem or blockchain can be implemented into this idea, or just through myth, like what is like a framework that can be implemented? That is my question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? I mean, there's a lot of pieces. We need digital identities. We want those identities to be decentralized and under full, respect people's sovereignty. So it needs to be kind of an open system. And we're eventually we may need satellite data and oracles that can be trusted. We need investment. I mean, there's so many different ways. We need money to flow into this. That's where Project Catalyst can come in. Now, we don't want to become reliant on Project Catalyst for funding. We want to be generating real value. But then there's other financial vehicles like NFTs and things like that that could help move some financing into this as well. And Doobie, to answer your question, like first steps, I think if we are thinking about asking for funding in a upcoming Catalyst funding round, I think we really have to focus on hard assets on the ground. And like you said, we have to talk to people on the ground, see what they need, think about those needs within the context of a permaculture design, and think about what those assets might be. I mean, things that come to mind, one thing that we talked about a lot, people are in a position that they used to use trees for heat source, for fuel. Now they've moved on to cow manure. So there goes your pasture. And so how are they cooking? What are they using this fuel for? And what other, more sustainable forms of heat can we help provide? Like solar cookers. I mean, this is like a pretty sunny area right near the equator. Solar cookers could be extremely efficient, And then when we do things like that, maybe eventually that we can even pull in carbon credits as another piece for financing. Pumps, to get that water that's flowing downhill back uphill. We had somebody drop, I think it might have been you, Bruno, that dropped in that link to the Bunyip pumps, which are just amazing. They're passive pumps. They just work on basically gravity to pump water uphill. And then, if we're doing this landscape wide, changes to the landscape, like shovels, we're talking, a lot of people can do a lot of work with shovels. But there's also oxen. Maybe there's even a place for, limited machinery of some kind, if it's even possible to get out there. But yeah, I mean, that's part of the first fact-finding mission, is really seeing what people need, what those people can use on the landscape to start the process of regeneration. and just make sure that they get funding, and that will help us gain a lot of trust if we're putting tools in the hands of people and putting money in the hands of people, even if it's just a small bit. Then they can run with it and they can start building it and making more room for more people.
I'll just add to Bruno's question about the competition. Since last time we discussed, I was been discussing with a few people, and in fact, I come to believe now, I don't think we have problem of land to get in different districts. Now I have a kind of promise from another district that we can have the same kind of land, the unoccupied land near or in the valley that's near the major river. In fact, one of the rivers that supplies to Omo River in the Gojab River. So our problem is going to be resources and funds to if we can get 3, 4, 5 districts to do the same thing, and we can have competition between these districts to, yeah. My concern is, do we have enough funds to finance all those projects? But probably there is a way they can really do themselves, copy, without really needing that much resources from our side. Otherwise, we are really good on that respect.
So yeah, I feel like the resources. Sorry, Melanie. Sorry, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, you know, if you think about living sustainably, and especially in my case, you figure out the bare essentials of what you need. So, you know, financing, you could finance the whole project from top to bottom, and it's very hard to make that money go. But if we look at it like a forest, like our limited resources, and go, okay, how can we divvy this up and make what funds we have available do have the most impact? I think about saving seeds. You know, if I've got a few seeds, I grow, and it'll take a season before I have a massive amount of seeds. But how can we find the absolute seeds for this funding to do the most work? That's my question.
So maybe, I don't know, I personally feel like for something so large, like I feel like this is quite big, I don't know, in my opinion, if we're talking about multiple districts within Ethiopia, and then, yeah, having a competition between, and then how would you reward, you know, a whole district? That's like going to be a lot of trees that you're rewarding, because if there's like 100,000 participants, or not, or maybe not, they're all participants, but 100,000 residents in a district, and, you know, they've done whatever. So like, I don't know exactly what we're going to do for all of this. Like, obviously it's going to be difficult to do the educational part, because you're going to need to educate people on exactly what's like, okay, what are you rewarding? What type of trees, how you would plant the trees, or how you'd dig a swale, or whatever it may be. And, you know, what are the benefits of this? Because people aren't going to do it if there's no benefit, like, of them doing that, because there needs to be clear that this isn't just for the competition, it's for the landscape. You know, there's going to need to be a very clear messaging around that, you know, within the communities and stuff. And yeah, it just needs to be defined, like, how you're going to educate all these people to understand what they're doing, because it's I don't think it's just about doing it, it's about people understanding, and then they can build their knowledge, because they'll be like, okay, this is one step, but what's the next step? And then you can kind of educate them on that. I feel like it has to be something ongoing, and, you know, maybe what we do in one place can actually, whatever the reward is for one place can actually spread onto the other places. It doesn't need to be like, you know, winner takes all type of thing. It should be like, okay, this is the winner. We're going to kind of focus resources here because they maybe put in the most work, and maybe they're got the most people interested in this like topic within their communities. But then it could filter onto other communities, people who've like were also interested, go see what was done, what, you know, plants were used, or what, you know, systems were created there, and can kind of replicate or educate themselves around that. I don't know. I feel like there's so much potential for, you know, collaboration and stuff. And I feel like, yeah, this project as a whole could be something that is wider than just us here. I feel like it already is, because we're talking about, you know, somewhere, you know, in Ethiopia with lots of people living there, and, you know, could benefit a lot of them. But it could be something that obviously I feel like World Mobile could be a really, really good candidate for collaborating, because I mean, we're literally talking about how, you know, they can't connect to the call because of the lack of internet connection. So that would be something great. And I don't know if they have an MOU with like the Ethiopian government, but I know they're speaking with so many governments in Africa. So it might really be the case that they have some sort of talks been going on there. And if we do have a large scale like regenerative agriculture project, I'm 100% sure World Mobile will be on board. They have like a very sustainable like business model, and they're all about sharing shared economy. So empowering people on the ground to have ownership and have revenue streams and better connectivity. So I feel like that's, I mean, a really cool way that we could empower people and,
Bruno,
you know, improve connectivity. Like we
Bruno,
could actually
I hear the
communicate.
voice. I hear the voice of another connector. And you know, we see these complex systems. And I have this little quote on my wall from Mark Twain: "The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking down your complex problems into manageable tasks." You've brought this up about education, about these other components. And that may be one of the pieces that those who are not immediately directly involved could help with. Cardano4Climate has an education piece. That part's getting built out and will include regenerative agriculture, information about Ethiopia. So let's connect these pieces so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But as a fellow connector, let's figure out how to organize it, break it down, and bring it together. Saying that, I'm noticing we're 3 hours in, is that right? And Brock, you said you've got to go. I'm recording. Simon has to leave. Do you need me to take host? And Doobie, you too? What's up? Yeah. So Kit, and again, it's a complex problem. Is it possible to wrap up, say, in 5 minutes and we carry on at another time?
I think we have said most of the things that we said. I just want to add one thing, that there was a question that raised how blockchain technology is going to help us with this. All things that we are saying now about sustainable technology, sustainable agriculture, and permaculture have been tried in Ethiopia for the last 20 years. I think the missing part was the governance, the sharing of information. And now blockchain technology provides that one, that missing piece. With a blockchain technology, we have the chance to really expand. There is, how can I say, there is really an interest to really take the country out of the problems that it is in. The political leadership had the willingness to do that, but the tools, they were missing until now. But we have those tools in this for the funding, for the governance, for documentation, the things we have those tools. If we start implementing in a small scale, then I really believe that the country is ready to accept those things and to implement in larger scale, in a countrywide scale. That's what I believe.
Any other last words?
I mean,
Doobie, are you heading out, or do you want to?
All the time.
Are you putting up your hand? Is it a buy or putting up a hand?
I'm going to put up my hand soon. It's been a long day.
Sorry,
but,
Tyler.
No, don't be sorry. This has been awesome. One of the greatest days. But yeah, I mean, it's like Tagain is saying, it's and like so many people in this conference have said, it's like we have to start with the models. And what Tichaf is saying, we start small, we prove, we gain trust, we start moving a small amount of funding, and we let the funding and the regeneration and the networking all follow to the point where maybe, maybe we aren't that many years away from districts competing with each other. I don't think we're there now. I think that's many orders of fractal beyond where we are right now. But it's just about crafting that proposal and just keeping the conversation going. And it's kind of cool that this has become like one of my little babies, but I'm kind of pretending to be a leader today, but it's not necessarily, where I'm the most comfortable. I'm not always the best at like rallying the troops. So please don't let it rely on myself and to gain to keep this thing going. I mean, we're here, I'm dedicated, my heart is in it. And I want to see this happen. But it really just takes so much. We need a lot of brains and hearts and hands on this one. So that's all I have to say today. This has been awesome.
It takes a community. This is not
Yeah,
not a one man, one woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'll probably butcher this saying, but I heard it in Ethiopia, and it's 50 lemons is like it's a burden to carry for one person, but it's a pleasure for a community to carry. And it's important that we work together, we see this together, we come up with good ideas, and we work on them. I'm a firm believer that we have all of the understandings, knowledge, resources at our hands to do small things and big things without additional funding, without anything else. What we have right here is enough to start. If we can really hear the words of what nature in that space needs and the people need, then it won't be what we want to put on that environment, but it's what the environment wants to grow alongside us. So yeah, I'd love to breathe life into that and see where it goes. Thanks a lot for hosting this. It's great to meet everyone.
May I share with you one, probably the last bit. It's a music from the community. So.
Oh, please.
Does this have volume?
I can't hear it yet.
Yeah,
you can't hear it.
No,
I cannot. Maybe there's a share.
Yeah, unshare, and then select. Make sure that you include sound. This is our lesson from today.
Let me see.
Yeah. So like Melanie said, when you click share screen, I think on the bottom left there's a little box that says share sound. You just click that. That's all you got.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
Now I'm an expert.
Oh, okay. Let me. Yeah, that's the Yem traditional music played by almost the whole community. It's a collective music.
It's a collective music. Let's leave it there. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Much love.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks. Recording's off, going to be uploaded to YouTube. I need the link to the original video that you shared from Tachara.
I have put together both of them. Have you put them together? Maybe you can send it to Taylor.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'll upload this to YouTube, Tyler. Sorry, it's just a little bit of logistics. I'll upload it. Any kind of description, links to documents, let me take that off your hands. And Doobie's put in a link to Gmail for himself to connect with, please. I'm saving the chat, so there's information there that we can collect as well. And yeah, woo, It's the
Yeah.
beginning. Every day is a new beginning and a new, feels like a new branch or a new sprout or something coming. So
Beautiful.
wow. Okay.
Thank you, Mama
super.
Bear.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, my son. This is
All
so
right.
good. Okay, ciao, you guys. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Is it just? It's just us in here. Yes. We can close it out. Whoop, you're muted.
The recording's still going. I bet you Simon left it running.
Okay.
So I just wanted to come back here and make sure there's no stragglers. So all we have to do is leave and then it'll shut down the recording.
Cool. I
And
did
then-
record also in case there's any issues.
Good. Awesome.
But
This
thank you
was
for doing that. Yeah.
let's record. So Simon's probably got control of the record button.
Okay.
but,
I'm gonna
uh,
stop my